Great. Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission this Wednesday evening, October 8th. I now call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Michael,
Here.
Vice Chair Kranz,
Here.
Commissioner Robbins,
Here.
Commissioner Narita,
Here.
Commissioner Renault,
Here.
Youth Commissioner Singh,
Here.
and Youth Commissioner Scott.
Here.
All right.
Welcome. We are excited to be here in person with options for those who choose not to be in person to still participate virtually. For those attending in person, complete a yellow request to speak slip and hand it to the clerk. If participating remotely, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom and you'll be called on at the appropriate time. If calling in via phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for that specific item. Clerk, please read the consent calendar.
Certainly. On our consent calendar, we have the approval of the September 10th regular meeting minutes.
Is there any member of the commission who would like to pull an item from the consent calendar? If not, hold on. Have we received any requests to speak on the consent calendar?
I have not received any in person for consent calendar, and I do not have anyone online. I will give them a few moments. Again, this is for consent calendar only. If you choose to speak on it, please raise your hand now. All right, it looks like we do not have any.
Great. Is there a motion from commission to approve the consent calendar?
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar as written.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. And roll call?
Awesome. Chair Michael,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kranz,
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins,
Aye.
Commissioner Narita,
Yes.
and Commissioner Renault.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
Great. Next on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public wishing to comment on any item not appearing on the agenda may address the commission at this time. State law prevents the commission from taking action on any matter not on the agenda. Your comments may be referred to staff for follow-up. This public comment section is generally limited to a total of 15 minutes. However, that is subject to commission's discretion and can be extended if commission wishes to do so. And one more note, we welcome speakers providing public comment, but please be advised this is a limited public forum. As such, speakers must stay on topic if speaking to a particular agenda item, and if speaking during general public comment, they must address matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. If speakers fail to follow these rules, they will be warned, and if they continue to disregard our rules, their opportunity to speak will be ended. Do we have any public comment requests?
I have not received any in person for public comment, and I will wait a few moments to let folks online. Again, this is for public comment items not listed on the agenda. All right, Madam Chair, does it look like we have any?
Great. So I'll move on to new business. We're first going to hear a presentation about the Grand Boulevard Initiative project update. I believe the presenter is Casey Halls from Samtrans, if you'd like to come up and hopefully pronounced your name correctly. Thank you. And I see Sue Ellen. And whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you, everyone. My name is Cassie Halls, and I'm the manager of major corridors at Samtrans. I'm also joined by Sue Ellen Atkinson, who is working with me at the SMCTA on this effort. They're a close partner, as well as Jacob Buffenberg from Caltrans, and Millie Tolson, our planning director. So I'll be providing an overview of the Grand Boulevard Initiative, a multi-agency partnership to implement transportation improvements on El Camino Real, and a planning study called the Grand Boulevard Initiative GBI Action Plan, which we are planning to publish this fall. Next slide. All right. So I mentioned that the Grand Boulevard Initiative is a multi-agency partnership. We also have 15 jurisdictions up and down El Camino and San Mateo County that are a part of this initiative. And this is a transportation-focused effort. And the TA and Caltrans are joining us today because they're a very active partner in this effort, as well as advocates and business groups in San Mateo County. And Samtrans is working with these partners to lead workshops with staff from these jurisdictions and agencies to build momentum around transforming transportation infrastructure on El Camino Real. And so what we're consistently hearing is that we need to modernize transportation infrastructure on El Camino. It's still designed in a way where cars are able to move very quickly, leading to a lot of mobility and safety issues for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other users of the corridor. And then lastly, a big effort that we are undertaking, and the real value add of GBI for cities such as San Mateo, is that we are working to advance a coordinated Caltrans process. So we are we're sponsoring this effort with the TA, and this will hopefully make it a lot easier for cities to not have to go at it alone. It's a multi-year process. It costs many millions of dollars to go through this process, and so we are sponsoring the first phase of the Caltrans approval process, which I can talk about more on future slides. So just if people might know about GBI if you've been around for a while, and we've organized the GBI into a task force and working group. So staff from the City of San Mateo have attended both the task force and the working group. The only difference is that the working group is more focused on implementation and just the city and agency staff. These are all of the partners that are involved in GBI. So Samtrans is leading the effort. However, we are joined by the SMCTA, CCAG, Caltrans, and MTC. And what is great about having all these agencies together in this effort is that we're able to speak with one voice and align our policies and plans for El Camino and provide a unified approach for how we are planning and funding projects on the corridor. So San Mateo is currently involved. I presented to you all a few months back about the Central El Camino Real multimodal plan. So this is one local study of many that is currently happening on El Camino in San Mateo County. And GBI is coordinating across 9 different projects and studies underway currently. So some of these are being led by Caltrans, some by cities, and some by Samtrans and other regional agencies like CCAG, for example. But the main thing is that we're working to both define the regional vision for the corridor while these plans are defining the local vision. And so we really do need to work hand in hand with the local visions to make sure that there is both the community-driven aspect as well as the, as much as possible, seamless experience for users, so there are continuous facilities across the corridor. Okay, so I'm going to talk briefly about the GBI action plan. And this is intended to serve as the feasibility study, which is a Caltrans requirement, to refine design concepts prior to starting the first phase of the Caltrans process. And so today we're just talking about what is included in the action plan and then hoping to get your input on our goals and vision and things like that. And so the GBI action plan is intended to be adopted by countywide agencies. So Samtrans and the TA will adopt this plan. Cities will not adopt it as they are adopting their local visions. And we are seeking adoption this winter. And the bedrock of this GBI action plan, which I'll be showing you in slides today, is the output from the task force and the working group workshops, which San Mateo has been very active in. And we've sought extensive input from city and city staff partners and advocates and business groups in each step of developing the plan. So today's presentation is a part of a broader engagement effort that we are leading, and it will culminate in going to the Samtrans and TA board in the end of the calendar year. So we worked with the task force and working group to define a corridor-wide vision. And what we heard from everyone is that safety, mobility are top issues. And there's also a lot of importance in terms of trying to create a vibrant street and making it something that is equitable so all ages and abilities can travel comfortably. There's a lot of problems on El Camino, so we work together with the GBI members to define what our priority problems were on El Camino. And so try to keep these front of mind because I'm actually going to revisit this slide. So the top problems that we heard were safety, mobility, and then the process challenges. So first, El Camino Real has, a high level of fatal and serious injury crashes, particularly for people walking and biking. El Camino's highway-like design discourages alternative mobility options. And then lastly, it's too challenging to develop, implement, and fund transportation projects on El Camino. So the goals that we developed for the GBI action plan, and that will guide our work moving forward, is to adopt a safety-first mindset to eliminate fatal and serious injury crashes, to transform El Camino Real into a complete street that works for all users, and to create a new framework for change. And how we're doing that new framework for change is to work with Caltrans and our partners to lead this coordinated Caltrans process. This is just a high-level overview of the types of streetscape changes that cities across El Camino are considering. This doesn't mean that every city is doing all these things, but this is the menu of options that cities are considering. And I know many of these things are included in all of San Mateo's local plans, so this is consistent with, this is just the broader toolkit that we are considering. So everything from safety to active transportation and transit improvements. I just wanted to quickly make the tie-in to the Central El Camino Real multimodal plan. So this is a effort that I presented to you all on before, but this is 4 cities. So San Mateo, Belmont, San Carlos, and Redwood City are involved in this. And this is intended to define the local vision that will feed into this coordinated Caltrans process. And we'll establish the specific context sensitive design for this area. And then GBI aligns with all of the plans and policies in San Mateo. So we drew from a lot of these plans that have been adopted, and we're also continuing to coordinate with Complete Streets Plan and other efforts. Okay, so I'm actually going to invite Jake and Sue Ellen to also speak on this slide. But I wanted to kind of lay out the scope and the costs that we anticipate for this effort, because it's going to be a big effort and it's going to take a long time. So the Caltrans process takes about 8 to 10 years to get to construction, especially for a corridor of this length and effort. So we have up to 22 miles of streetscape redesign that we're looking to do. And so the whole process, going to take a while. It's also going to cost a lot. So it's going to cost, we estimate, around $750 million to make the improvements in all of the cities on El Camino. And why this matters is that individual cities might struggle to make improvements on El Camino, but by banding together and also having the SMCTA and Samtrans and Caltrans involved, we're able to tap into larger funding sources, and we're also able to kind of tell a compelling story of why El Camino needs to change, even beyond the city boundaries. And just in terms of where we are in this process, we're currently on the far left in the GBI action plan, and then we'll be moving into the project initiation document, which is the conceptual planning phase in early next year, and then moving into design and construction. But I'll pass it over to Sue Ellen to start, and then Jake.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for having us tonight. I'm Sue Ellen Atkinson, Manager of Planning and Fund Management with the San Mateo County Transportation Authority, or the TA. And for those who are not as familiar with the TA, we manage the measures A and W sales tax measures within San Mateo County that support transportation projects. So we are very excited to be partnering with Samtrans on the GBI effort. And one thing that we've particularly been focusing on as part of that partnership is that $750 million number that's up on the screen. It's a very expensive cost when you think about it for all of El Camino. And so the specialty that our agency brings to this is partnerships with Caltrans and our ability and expertise in funding large projects of this type and of phasing and strategizing fundings in order to construct large projects like a $750 million project. We also have a grants team at the San Mateo County Transit District, which Samtrans and the TA are part of, who help us to bring in funding from outside sources for large projects. So what we're hoping for, if you're in agreement that we're moving in the right direction with the Central El Camino plan, and then dovetailing that with the GBI effort, is that the TA would co-sponsor this project. And that means that we would be eligible for this project to be a project of countywide significance. So under the TA's funding programs like the Highway Funding Program, projects of countywide significance, the TA can fund up to 50% of those projects. So that would enable us to help fund these efforts along El Camino and take on that responsibility with Samtrans on behalf of the cities. And our hope is that that would really help to minimize the amount of funding that cities would need to contribute individually. And the other part of co-sponsoring this project is it gives us the ability to coordinate and combine projects throughout the county in a way that's strategic and helps us to phase that funding that's needed. Even with the TA being able to fund about half of this project, we can't fund that all at once. We need to identify phasing, we need to identify priorities, and we need to do that in a way that cities are not competing against each other for funding and that we're doing that in a coordinated way. And so we're able to do that from a higher level and produce even stronger applications for outside funding programs because we're still going to need a lot of funding from outside sources to make this project happen. But we're able to do that better by taking a collaborative and strategic approach. So together with Samtrans and Caltrans as partners, we're trying to address this starting really early as to how we collaborate across city borders so that each city isn't trying to tackle this on their own. And now I will pass it along to Jake.
Is on already? Great. Thank you everyone for having me. It's a pleasure to be here in San Mateo tonight. My name is Jake Buffenberger. I'm the System Planning Branch Chief at Caltrans Bay Area for San Francisco, San Mateo, and Marin counties. Just wanted to come and talk a little bit about Caltrans' role in this. Obviously, Caltrans is the owner and operator of Highway 82, or also known as El Camino Real. And Caltrans is required to engage in long-range corridor planning for the facilities we own and operate. How we do this has changed a lot in the last couple of years, like a lot of things at Caltrans have changed in the last couple of years. For now, our most robust long-range planning documents are called Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plans, or CMCPs for short. And you probably saw that extending on the timeline of the multiple different planning efforts along El Camino on a previous slide. Essentially, this document explores the existing and future conditions of a facility and recommends projects to improve it. This document tackles a wide range of issues and examines all modes of travel. And while District 4 has completed many CMCPs for traditional freeway facilities, this is one of our first CMCPs for conventional highway, and that essentially means that it, runs through multiple main streets in various jurisdictions throughout the county. Because of the critical nature and unique features of El Camino Real, we're adjusting our standard operating procedure for this CMCP. Because we understand that on a corridor like this, it takes extensive partnerships with both regional and local stakeholders. And we are extremely pleased to partner with Samtrans, the TA, and CCAG, and all of the cities along the peninsula on this CMCP and the ongoing GBI efforts. We plan to directly incorporate both the vision from the GBI and the projects determined in the action plan as a part of the CMCP. And we also plan to use the GBI stakeholder framework that they've built to be the backbone of our own engagement strategy. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them for Caltrans.
Great, thank you. So with that, I just have a couple discussion questions and also happy to answer questions just more generally about GBI and the GBI action plan. But I'm interested to hear from you all, what goals do you have for the corridor? Is what we proposed aligned with that? How can we best work together to advance the GBI vision? And are you supportive of the GBI process as we have described it? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any public comments on this section?
Yes, we do. I see one online with a hand raised. If you choose to speak on this particular item, please also raise your hand. We'll give them a moment. And then I have 3 in person. I will go with the 3 in person first, and then I will address the 2 online. My last speaker online will be April. And I will call Paul Krupka up. He will be our first speaker.
Beautiful to be here. Thank you so much. My name is Paul Krupka. I'm a San Mateo resident and a professional transportation consultant and engineer. I first want to thank you, Chair Michael, and the commission, including these wonderful young commissioners. It's very cool to see that kind of energy as well. I think you're essential in what you do for this community, and your advice and all the tireless work you do is much appreciated. I'm very grateful for you. And thank you, Cassie, and your team, the leadership, board members at Samtrans, the TA, and do not forget Caltrans. I'm a big supporter of this project. I think that it's extremely cool that it's moving forward, that the county's taken a real lead role. It's full of challenges, but I believe that having Samtrans in the lead in its new, bigger, bolder configuration of really approaching transportation as a whole in the county and in its service area, I think we've got what it takes to deliver the changes that are really needed. I think for a long time, with the history that we have of the GBI, it's time to make things happen. And again, I'm very proud that we're here talking about this, and you all are leading this. Thanks.
Thank you. And Madam Clerk, do we want to have a 3-minute timer for comments, or is it not necessary?
Yeah, we do have the timer going.
You
but
see it?
Okay. We'll need to have the stop sharing over there. So
Got it. Okay.
But we
as
do
long
see
as
it.
you have an eye on it, no problem.
Thank you. Next speaker is going to be Robert, and my last in-person speaker will be John after that. No? For the next item. Okay, both of you are for the next item? Perfect. Okay, well then we will move online. My first speaker online will be Seema, and my last one online will be April. Seema, I will allow you to talk now.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Seema. I currently serve as the chair of the Planning Commission, but I'm speaking on my own behalf tonight. I sent in a letter earlier. I'll hit the highlights. I'm super excited that we're looking at El Camino Real again. I've been following the progress on ECR in Mountain View, Los Altos, and Palo Alto, and it's been amazing to see the ADA improvements, pedestrian safety enhancements, and protected bike lanes, which have made ECR so much safer and more accessible to community members of all ages and abilities. I think it would be great if we had similar improvements in San Mateo. I think two things I wanted to note is that we've already done a lot of planning around ECR in San Mateo. There was the Grand Boulevard Initiative in 2006, our bicycle master plan in 2011, pedestrian master plan in 2012, sustainable streets plan in 2015, bike master plan again in 2020, transit oriented development pedestrian access plan in 2022, general plan 2040, circulation element in 2024, and now our complete streets plan. All of these, except for the bike master plan, have indicated multimodal improvements on El Camino. And so I think it would be great if we could, as quickly as possible, move past planning and move into implementation, because it feels like ECR has been studied pretty extensively already. And then the last thing I'll say is that there is a state law, SB 960, that requires Caltrans to integrate complete streets elements into every project on the state highway system. It's not possible for San Mateo to opt out of certain complete streets elements like protected bike lanes. And so I would just make sure that as we move forward, we're including all elements of multimodal transportation and active transportation in the designs for El Camino Real. That's it for me. Thank you so much.
All right, our next speaker will be April. April, I will allow you to talk now.
Hi, my name is April Webster. I live in Mountain View, but I used to work in San Mateo for a few years. I serve as vice chair of the Caltrans D4 Bicycle Back. I'm co-chair of the MTC Active Transportation Working Group. And I'm speaking on my behalf tonight, but I'm someone who's spent the past several years really working to help coordinate the ECR Complete Streets project across jurisdictions, agencies, and for the past several years, including right here in San Mateo. So first of all, like others, I want to acknowledge Caltrans and the GBI. They are doing transformational work. They're bringing the cities together, counties, state, together to reimagine ECR as a safe, green, and connected spine for the entire Bay Area. Their collaboration is already delivering real public benefit. This effort reflects a shared statewide and regional vision, as a former previous speaker said, under SB 960 and DP 37. Complete streets are now the default standard for all Caltrans projects, and that includes SHOP projects. The D4 bike plan, which I helped advise, identifies ECR as a high priority corridor for class 4 separated bikeways from San Jose through Palo Alto, Mountain View, and all the way up to San Mateo County. On just last week, we saw that vision realized at the ECR ribbon cutting in Santa Clara County. It's a 55 million SHOP project, 13 miles of new protected bike lanes through Mountain View, Los Altos, and Palo Alto. Caltrans received a certificate of recognition from Senator Becker and Assemblymember Berman, who were there. And the project team also earned an internal Orange Award for advancing Vision Zero. It was a really magical moment, I have to say. I couldn't believe how many people showed up. All levels of government were there working together. I rode that stretch myself with a couple of council members from Mountain View and several city staff. And it was the first time I actually felt safe biking on ECR. Now I just want to say, San Mateo, it's your turn. This corridor connects us all. And, as the old saying goes, we're only as strong as our weakest link. So pulling back here would undermine the regional progress already underway. Again, I want to thank Caltrans, GBI, and the City of San Mateo for your early leadership in the 2015 Sustainable Streets Plan, which called for raised protected bike lanes long before state policy required them. This is amazing. I've looked at this plan for years. And finally, I just want to urge you to uphold the vision, align with, SB 960, DP 37, and the District 4 bike plan, and just continue the leadership that's making ECR safer, more connected, and more sustainable for everyone. Thanks.
Madam Chair, that concludes public comment.
Great, thank you. I'll close public comment and bring back to the commission for additional questions and discussion. It's maybe smart to start with questions and then we could come back around for comments. Go ahead, Commissioner Robbins.
Great. Actually, would you mind terribly, Madam Chair, if we do questions and comments together? It might be a little more efficient.
Go ahead, sure.
On this one, if you can. I'm supportive of the process. Thank you very much. I would like to see a little more action, as important as I know planning is. It's been going on a long, long time. I had a full head of hair when I first heard about this. That was a long time ago. One question, though, is I've never gotten an answer on this. Is there building design, architecture, mixed use, any zoning element to this at all to try and coordinate among the cities?
That's a great question. So GBI used to kind of have this broader focus. So it was housing, land use, and transportation. We know that the housing and land use piece has largely been addressed by state law and all the progressive work that local jurisdictions are doing, such as Measure T locally, right? And so our focus is primarily on transportation. So we're really focused on trying to improve streetscape improvements or trying to implement streetscape improvements. And like you said, El Camino has been very studied, and we really want to, put the rubber on the road, so to say. And the good thing is that we are, we've done this planning study as it was a requirement by Caltrans. However, we are about a couple months away from starting the implementation process. So that coordinated effort is hopefully going to make it a lot easier for cities to implement improvements and is going to mean that we save millions of dollars from doing unnecessary, additional bureaucratic work so that we can all kind of move forward.
Yeah, I understand that, but okay. So the actual design elements, the idea of trying to coordinate a truly grand boulevard from above the street level and the buildings is just not part of this anymore, really. Okay. On the traffic, and this one's probably into the weeds a little bit, but if you are heading to implementation, I've not done any formal surveys, but I have discussed this with neighbors in San Mateo fairly regularly. And the two biggest problems in San Mateo that people raise their eyebrows about, and Caltrans particular for El Camino, is the quality of the road itself. It just sucks, to be honest, and the city Public Works Department, City of San Mateo, does an incredible job with the limited resources they have working on arterials and other roads. And then people come out of the neighborhood. My street, Burial A, is a main road. Boom, they go into El Camino and you just bounce up and down. So getting that road actually regularly smoothed out, because the city can't, would be huge. And then a minor point, but it's been a major one for me going back years, is looking at, just like to put the bug in somebody's ear again, to look at limiting left turns during heavy commute hours, because the road backs up in both directions every morning and every evening during that time when folks stop. And then there's a bus in the right lane and it just makes a mess of it. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Robbins. Go ahead, Commissioner Narita.
Thank you. Hello, it's so nice to meet you in person and lovely to see you, Sue Ellen. And thank you, Jake. So a couple questions. Let's talk money. Well, no. I always like to talk money, but I'll talk that second. Let's talk the public comments first. So 2 out of the 3 public comments, the comment from Seema and the comment from April, seem to suggest that the city of San Mateo maybe wanted to opt out of certain modes of transportation or certain pieces of the menu of options. Seema said something like the city can't opt out because of complete streets rule laws, and April said we don't want to pull back. So Jay and Matt, I was just curious if you had any context, or I'm missing something. It sounded like the public comments knew something that I just didn't know in terms of the city's thoughts or feedback to GBI?
I think one of the public comment referred to one of the Senate bills in reference to complete streets, but I would say that is probably more applicable to Caltrans. Maybe Jay can speak on it to see how Caltrans integrates, if I recall correctly, SB 960 into their projects.
Can you might come to the mic so that anyone on Zoom can hear it too? Thank you so much.
Sure. I think guidance from headquarters in Sacramento for how we implement SB 960 is expected to come out pretty soon here, and I would have a better answer for you at that time. But I can follow up on that. But I think, not to speak out of turn, but I think the question you're trying to get to is, have we heard anything from the city of San Mateo or the citizens of San Mateo to suggest that they don't want this kind of improvement? And that's not something that I would speak on.
Yeah, I can just add a little bit more. So currently we have the Central El Camino Real multimodal plan that we're working closely with San Mateo on, as well as San Carlos, Belmont, and Redwood City. And so San Mateo and those other cities just completed the first round of engagement. We heard very similar comments to what I'm hearing today in terms of, narrow sidewalks, driver issues with failing to yield, permissive turns, as well as insufficient bicycle infrastructure. So all of this feedback will be going into the alternatives that will be developed as a part of that plan. And so we are still actively in the process of developing those alternatives in partnership with the cities. So we'll make sure to incorporate all of the bicycle related comments in that.
Okay, great. But so the city staff team, have you given any sort of official feedback or letters or thoughts or calls? I don't know,
Yeah, I think the piece that is probably being referenced to is that as we were going forward on our complete streets plan, which has not been finished yet, we were focused on El Camino Real as a transit priority corridor, and we were focused on using Delaware as our other fully north to south corridor that goes from the Belmont to the Burlingame border as our priority corridor for bike infrastructure, recognizing the realities of the challenges of putting protected bike lanes on El Camino Real. I think that the challenge with that obviously is that to put in protected bike lanes, something has to give, and it's either going to be parking or it's going to be a lane of travel. And so that's the challenge. And I think in the past, I've been around long enough to remember been around for the first Grand Boulevard initiative, and there were issues at the time. There were agreements that said you can't ever take away a lane of travel on El Camino in San Mateo County. So I just think that the challenges that we faced on some of our recent bike projects, in terms of any parking removal, that taking away parking on El Camino is going to be something that would require a significant community engagement process. And taking away a lane of travel obviously would require significant study in terms of what does that mean for circulation and whatnot. So that's sort of, I think, where we've been going in the past with the Complete Streets plan, is looking at prioritizing our bike infrastructure on the Delaware corridor and focusing El Camino as transit. We're obviously participating in the GBI process right now. And so I think that that's still an ongoing conversation in terms of where things could go, but it's the reality of some of those challenges, I think, of being able to do some of the things that folks want to see on El Camino, is that we've got limited right of way and there's going to have to be trade-offs to be able to accommodate that. So I think that's probably what's being referred to in terms of us going back is there was a plan in 2015, a sustainable streets plan that did not actually get fully adopted by council. We didn't have the environmental part that went with that talked about looking at El Camino, and it talked about potentially looking at protected bike lanes on El Camino for a segment of it, but it called it out for something for future study. So it wasn't something that was said that we're going to do this. And so it's been referenced, but it's something that, was referenced in the context of we need to do further study on that.
Okay, that's super helpful. Thank you so much. So just has there ever been a study, not like of the bike master plan, I understand the bike master plan, but of the feasibility of transit and biking infrastructure and walking infrastructure along the city of San Mateo's El Camino Real corridor? Has that ever been looked at, design, possibilities of different designs or anything like that? Or is this the process, this GBI process, the moment to actually have that investigation?
I would go ahead and say one of the online speaker actually mentioned two plans. One is the Transit-Oriented Development Pedestrian Access Plan that I think we brought to this commission here, TODPAP, as well as the Pedestrian Master Plan that have been adopted. And both of those projects actually have projects to improve the pedestrian realm on El Camino. The most recent one being TODPAP. Specific to bikes, there are not any adopted plans that speaks to how we want to envision El Camino for San Mateo limits.
Okay, so then over to Cassie then, would that be something that the Grand Boulevard Initiative would look into in your process?
Yes. So as a part of the local plan that we have, the Central El Camino multimodal plan, which is working in partnership with those 4 cities I mentioned, we are looking at the feasibility of various alternatives. And we're still in the process of, we just gathered the first round of engagement. We're currently working toward doing a alternative development review with the community in the January-February timeline. And so we're happy to come back to you all then for the Central El Camino plan and share those alternatives.
Okay, and Sue Ellen, you used to do a lot of public engagement with the city of San Mateo. So you're kind of a ringer on this, and I want to take advantage of that. My recollection was that the Bike Master Plan did not talk about El Camino specifically because the city doesn't own El Camino. In prior feedback, like in all the projects that you've done, I thought I remember something around the Hillsdale intersection, maybe where like people were actually talking about the need to address El Camino and bikes. Are you remembering what I'm remembering, or is that not something that you talked about?
I don't want to speak for Sue Ellen, but I would just mention, Commissioner Narita, that we do have a project at 28th Avenue and El Camino, the gap closure project. That's currently still active, a little behind schedule due to staff resources, but that does look into the possibility of getting bicycle access across El Camino.
That's the east-west, though, not the north-south.
That is the east-west. That is not the north-south. So I do want to note that project is active.
Okay, and we've never actually asked the community their thoughts at scale on north-south El Camino bike infrastructure versus transit versus ped versus parking versus car lanes. We've never done that kind of analysis?
Not one of this nature.
Okay.
I think, not one of this nature.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Now let's talk money. So Sue Ellen, that was very exciting to hear about the potential 50% project costs coming from the TA. I just wanted to better understand the estimated $750 million. Is that for all of the 15 jurisdictions, Cassie and Sue Ellen, or is that like just the city's part?
That's for the full extent of the El Camino corridor within San Mateo County.
Within the whole county?
Yeah.
Okay, and so the delta, so if the TA, assuming the TA does determine this to be a countywide significant project, and would be available to do the 50%, where are the best options for the other 50%?
There are so many different options. So the way that we would go about this is that we would have to phase it. Even, the TA funding, half of that, we're just evaluating our current highway call for projects, and we released $200 million in this cycle. So even were we to be able to put all of our highway funds, which are available every 2 years, to El Camino projects, we still wouldn't be able to fund the full half. So we need to be looking at this over many, many years. So just to clarify that. But in terms of what funding sources there are additional funding sources regionally, CCAG, MTC, from the state as well. And then federal funding sources, that's a little bit in flux right now, but depending on how many years out we're looking for funding, there may be additional options for larger projects from the federal government. And then there's also opportunities depending on how you package the projects. So were we to be looking at projects that are multi-jurisdictional and also multimodal, looking at transit, looking at pedestrian, possibly looking at bike, That makes for a stronger application, but it also makes applications and projects that are eligible for different sources of funding. So that's what we would be looking at, is really how do we leverage the half that the TA could fund in order to be able to provide those matching funds for other larger funding sources. And the funding sources, like from the state and from the federal government, they really like being the last dollar in often. So if the TA is able to fund half of a project at, a smaller segment that comes down to, $50 million, for example, and we were looking for 25 from another source, and that would be the final but the final bit of funding that's needed, it makes for a very competitive application. To answer your question, we have so many different transportation funding sources that are available. It just depends on which funding cycle we're looking at and what the specific project package is.
That's great. And are there any scenarios in which the city itself would be expected to pony up money?
Yeah, so just to add, we currently, as you see in this graphic, we are sponsoring the first phases of the effort, so that we've received a grant from MTC and the TA for $2.5 million to fund this initial portion. We have not yet determined roles and responsibilities for future phases. So we are going to work really hard, with the TA to figure out how to fund this and work very closely with cities. But we do not know yet what the city portion would be, what the expectations would be. So just full disclosure there, I would say where we are in the process, and just given the number we have is a very rough order of magnitude, we still need to make a lot of decisions about that.
Totally. And so are you saying that the city would be potentially expected to pay for more of the process planning and design and pre-development, or also the development?
So I think we don't quite know yet, but we are definitely paying for the conceptual planning phase. The design phase is still in flux. It may make sense to do one large PAD. I guess one note to make is that if each city tried to do their design phase, it would cost a ton of money. And so by having one that is for the whole corridor, we get a lot of economies of scale. So it may make sense for Samtrans, the TA, to continue to sponsor, PAED. However, that's going to be something like $15 million. So we need to determine what, funding sources would provide for that. But I would say we're not quite sure yet, but we will definitely be closely coordinating with cities and talking throughout the process.
Okay, great.
Through the chair, could I just add, I think, like, to your question, Chair Narita, I think it's
I'm not chair anymore, but
sorry. I think generally any grant funds require usually some level of match, and usually you have to match it with something that is a different color of money. So sometimes you can match, countywide local type funds with federal funds. And you've seen recently what we've tried to do with the Fashion Island Boulevard 19th Avenue project, where the city has currently very little dollars in that. We've got about $500,000 committed of local funds, and then we're trying to get the rest of it in TA funds as well as federal funds. So, but there is usually some level of expectation that cities are going to have to put money in. But if you notice the map, I noticed, and I haven't noticed this before, but when I looked at the map of the segment of the whole county, I think that San Mateo has the greatest length of all the cities in the county. And so there's a chance, of that 750 million is a good chunk of that there's more in San Mateo. So I think our challenge is that, locally funding significant amounts is going to be tough, because we just have we have a certain amount of dedicated transportation funding that comes into us, and a good percentage of that just goes towards trying to maintain our own mileage of pavement that we have. And so just funding our own, bike ped type projects, we're struggling always to find money. So coming up with the amount of money that may have to go into matching this would be challenging for this. So I think we would definitely be looking to rely on whatever outside TA or federal funds from MTC and things like that, or CCAG, that we could.
Thank you. That gets me to the questions for Jake. Jake, come on up.
Great question so far.
Thank you. I'm a bit of a ringer on this topic. So Jake, you represent the State Department of Transportation, also known as Caltrans. Caltrans has $18.7 billion as its budget right now this year. And so I was curious, as you foresee this being an 8 to 10 year journey for this region, where in the budgets of Caltrans does this live? And what are the things that the city needs to do in order to properly advocate to Caltrans and other state government leadership to be able to access some money to match the TA's money? I'm talking other color money, not the TA's 50%.
Sure.
Thank you.
So we have our kind of Fix It First SHOP program, which is our state highway operations protections program. I think there's limited possibility to get some of the low hanging fruit in with existing SHOP projects potentially along the corridor. That being said, I think the discretionary grant programs that the state offers, like Solutions for Congested Corridors or SCCP, which, the CMCP I was talking about earlier, a requirement of the Solutions for Congested Corridor program is that you have the project featured in a CMCP. I think that would be a competitive, this would be a very competitive project for that particular pot of money. I think that ATP could potentially be pretty competitive. TCEP, which is our Trade Enhancement Corridor, program.
Are there I totally understand cobbling things together from existing programs, but in the Caltrans experience, for other types of big projects, in other parts of the state, are there programs specifically for these super complicated things, or are the cities and the transit agencies expected to kind of cobble it together through existing programs?
I think in reality, it's more of the latter.
It's more of the latter.
Yeah, I think a lot of our budget, and again, I'm not particularly an expert in the funding side of things necessarily, but most of our money is spoken for already when it comes to specific performance metrics that we have for pavement condition, culverts, things that are in the SHOP program. When it comes to big mega projects of our own, I think we rely frequently on federal / discretionary sources of funding from state programs.
Okay, great. And you mentioned in your opening comments that Caltrans, while Caltrans owns El Camino Real as the thoroughfare 82, that you were adjusting kind of the process to be more, was it more collaborative? I was curious if you could expand upon that a little bit.
Yeah, I think in general, Caltrans in the last, I've been there for 10 years, started in District 3 up in Sacramento, and now I'm in District 4. There's been an overall paradigm shift, both internally and then put on to us by the legislator with things like SB 960 and SB 743 that have forced us to become a more forward-thinking agency when it comes to bicycle pedestrian improvements and not thinking of kind of the traditional Caltrans way of thinking, which is that
highway expansion,
cars first, that sort of thing. So I think that, being in a very large bureaucratic organization, that kind of large scale vision shift takes a long time. And I think we're really starting to see that manifest in tangible ways. I think we have a long way to go, but I think we're getting there. And I think that, these long-range planning documents that we've created in the past are highway, car, auto-centric focused. And I think one of the main things about this collaborative effort is that we're doing a lot more public engagement through SamTrans and the GBI effort. We're doing a lot more stakeholder engagement through this effort. And I think we just have a different set of goals than we had probably 5 years ago. Hopefully that answers your question.
That was great. Thank you. That was super clear. Thank you. I think I concluded my questions for you, Jake. Last question for probably for Cassie. Okay, so this is going to take 8 to 10 years. Political winds change, every 4. How do we ensure durability of whatever the end result of this process is, amidst all the, the long lag time that it takes to actually build things and for people to really see and feel and, experience the positive benefits?
Do you mean in terms of having it be kind of meeting the needs of current users, or do you?
Well, it's not going to meet the needs of current users, right? Because this is an 8 to 10 year journey. So I'm curious, like, how are we going to ensure that this actually does wind up being something that's a thing in 8 to 10 years versus something that just sits on the shelf again?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Sorry, just so I understand clearly, you're saying in terms of like what's constructed, or you mean in terms of the design process?
In terms of ensuring that whatever is decided upon after the end of this planning process, in fact, does get constructed.
Yeah, that's a great question. So one benefit of doing this process is that we actually don't have to make super hard decisions for a couple more years. So right now, we are in the action plan phase. We're about to enter the PID, which you see here on the graphic. In PA and ED, which is basically just design, that is where we have to decide on the preferred option. So whether San Mateo wants transit lanes or X, Y, and Z. And that's going to be happening in 2027. So we do have a little bit of time to make those decisions. We're also using a lot of, data-driven, and we are, even though we are focused on transportation, we are thinking about housing and the future developments that are coming in, and making sure that whatever we develop will be responsive to those future needs. And then the other piece is just, we are very committed to completing this effort and getting to construction. We know that, there's been 20 years of no, major construction on El Camino. And so just wanted to add that we feel very committed to actually delivering this project and not just having another project that sits on the shelf.
Thanks. All right, I'm going to hold on comments and everyone else can do questions.
Sure. Thank you. This side. Commissioners. Oh, thank you, Commissioner Krantz.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No fighting. So thanks for your presentation. It's really clear and concise. I appreciate that. So, and you don't have to flip to the slides, but slide 6, would it be a continuous bike path? Would there be congruency from city to city to city? Would it look the same as you drive further south? Or would each city have its own different flavor of bike path?
That's a great question. So each city is making the decisions on kind of the context-specific design for themselves. However, we're setting a toolkit of improvements that we want to see along the corridor. And that is also a reflection of what we've heard from various cities and advocates and all of that.
But at some point, you've got some standards that at a minimum, it's got to do this.
Yes.
Perfect.
So I would just say that right now, we don't have a vision for a continuous one type of facility for the whole way. What we want is continuous facilities as much as possible. So you don't want a bike lane that ends at the city boundary. You don't want a transit lane that only goes 2 blocks. So as much as possible, this is why it's really important that we have both the regional and the local pieces moving together, is that local cities can decide on what their preferred is. And then we can also talk through, convene the cities together. Maybe a Menlo Park and a Atherton need to make decisions together. And that's the benefit of having this forum.
Sounds good. Slide 19 talked about crashes. Would you be considering a level 4 segregated bike lane, or would be some variation of that?
That's a great question. So on El Camino Real, just given the high auto speeds and all of that, we generally recommend a separated bike facility. A class 2, which is what you see with the painted line, is generally not a all ages and abilities facility. So that is, a big part of what we talk about in the action plan, is making sure that what we are designing is safe and usable by all people on the corridor. I would say, just back to the previous comment, each city is going to decide what kind of facilities they want.
Okay, so there is some sort of a metric on the delta V, on the differential in speed between how fast cars are going and having bikes right next to them.
Correct.
Good point. Okay. Speaking a little bit to one of my fellow commissioners brought up earlier about left turns. Has it been considered to eliminate left turns, and maybe a block before you would need to make a left turn, make a right turn, and then 2 lefts, like they do in New Jersey? They call it a jug handle. Not a big fan of New Jersey, I'm just saying, but it seems to work. And it would seem in this very compressed, high density traffic thing we find ourselves in, if you want to load or charge the left turn lane, do it on a side road and then shoot everybody across. And it would, you wouldn't have to own or have a left turn lane. You now have opportunities to maybe convert that into a travel lane. Thoughts?
No, that's definitely a great idea. And I think restricting lefts is something we've been seeing come out of the community feedback and what we've heard from city staff as a potential option, but all of that is still under consideration.
Because I'm not seeing a huge downside to that. Yeah, you may have to make a right turn and then 2 lefts. But I think at the end of the day, it just, a lot of what we're doing here, what we're tasked with is throughput. We're trying to get more water down the pipe. And this might be a good way of doing this. We also talked about federal funding. Is there a possibility that some of this funding could be disappearing as we change administrations?
I think that the funding landscape at a federal level is very fluid right now. And it is whenever, I mean, no matter who is in charge, really. As previously mentioned, government can change hands every 4 years. And so there may be different priorities from administration to administration. So when we're putting together the phasing for funding, we would, of course, be looking at federal funding options, but we would have to remain very flexible in what is actually coming available, what comes out for the calls for projects, what types of projects are competitive and eligible, and then remain flexible in any event that funding were awarded and then no longer available. So I think the name of the game is to stay flexible, and we do stay aware of the funding landscape.
So what's the ratio? How dependent are we on state versus federal? Is it 50-50? Is it 10-90? How much money do we get from the state? And how much money do we get from the feds? I would guess probably more from the state for funding these projects, transportation projects.
For this project specifically?
Yeah, why not? Sure.
We don't know yet. We know right now that the TA could fund up to 50% of this.
Right.
After that, we need to determine what funding options are available and what the projects are eligible for.
Right.
So we haven't yet done that exercise.
Okay. So that brings up another interesting question. You mentioned earlier in the program that the TA can fund half the project, just not all at once. So 2 questions. What is the ordination? How do you figure out that gets done? And can you talk to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would just say that we're still figuring that out. There are many options in terms of how we segment the corridor. So for example, we're doing the Central El Camino Real multimodal plan. That could be a natural segment. This mid-county segment could be a natural segment to advance forward into, PS&E phase and construction phase. It really depends also on where cities are once we get through the design work. Do they want to, move quickly? Do they need a little bit of time? So I think it's going to continue to evolve. But I will note that we have a very good grants team who's good at making the storytelling and good at figuring out how we need to break up the corridor or the project into smaller projects to be eligible for various different types of improvements, different types of funding.
It seems like bang for the buck, your grant writer is really a linchpin for making this work, shaking the tree and finding avenues for making money. So a little off label. Has anybody considered making the bike lanes, the pedestrian passage lanes, elevated above one of the parked car lanes where we park cars to just make it an elevated thoroughfare? I do throw a lot of darts at the dartboard.
Yeah,
this is one that came up.
That hasn't come up, but it's an interesting idea. I think it would require a lot of cost in terms of providing that type of facility, but that's not something that we're considering right now.
Okay, good. Okay. The Hillsdale Bridge. Let's talk about that for a second. That was a project that was near and dear to the hearts of many of us because it would really, we're talking about bike lanes and access, and one of the stumbling blocks is not El Camino, but 101, trying to get from one side of 101 to the other. It's limited. The roads that do it are very, very congested, and it's almost like it's going to be an Olympic event at some point, just trying to navigate El Camino, or rather Hillsdale Boulevard, let's say, on a bicycle or even walking. I kind of found out today that the reason the project got killed is because Caltrans was doing the widening, and that killed all the projects for any of these bridges and stuff like that, plus trying to find money and funds. It seems interesting to me anyway, that Belmont was able to put the Blue Bridge in over 101, but we don't have the money we just can't do it. And San Carlos is now looking to do it. Any thoughts or any reason why? I know Jay is all over this. This is kind of your thing. Is there any economy of scale with trying to partner with San Carlos for putting, because the constituents that I talk to, District 4, some of the other districts, it's a hot button item. They would love to go over to Whole Foods on a bike, or they would love to, like even 19th, be able to navigate over 101, but you take your life in your hands.
Yeah, I could go ahead and give some context. So the previous bicycle master plan prior to the 2020 adoption actually had a Hillsdale bike head bridge that basically laps over US 101. Now, when we went ahead and engaged in the PAED phase, so we actually have funding for this, about 85% into the process, we realized the construction cost has significantly escalated from when the original planning document had been created. It was in the magnitude of over $60 to $80 million. So what we did as staff is, because we couldn't even fund the design phase at that time, when we're looking at it from the PAED phase, we wanted to go ahead and look for other funds to find out if there are other alternative solutions and the feasibility. So that's where we're currently at. The project is currently not moving forward because of funding restrictions, but we are still pursuing funds to look for a feasibility study to see if there are other ways to get bikes across US 101 on the Hillsdale corridor. So this is something that's been identified in our 2020 bicycle master plan.
Is it that the design and construction of the bridge was just designed to be too expensive? Do we pick a gold-plated bridge, or how did that work?
That's a really good question, because we did analyze the concept design, and it included 4 different landings, ultimately, where you can get to the west and the east of US 101, but there will be 2 landing. One will be on the north side, one will be on the south side, and then also on the west side of US 101 as well. So it'll
be 2 bridges.
It's one bridge, but it has multiple landings for peds and bikes to access. So in the concept of, is it gold-plated? I don't know, but it is very complex in terms of the design that was ultimately chosen.
But it's interesting that San Carlos is going ahead with the project in light of the deaths that have happened on Ralston and Holly. They're going ahead with it, and it's just a head scratcher that, I mean, we're way bigger than San Carlos is. I mean, and definitely way bigger than Belmont is. So inquiring minds want to know what's up with that.
Yeah, we actually,
I guess through the chair, we're happy to continue the conversation. It's
I say we move it back to
El Camino.
ECR.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm not sure that our
I
folks here are able to
apologize,
talk.
Commissioner Kranz. Maybe
Yep.
inquire offline more about this.
Okay. Well, I just thought it was part of a bike. Anyway, moving on. I'll go to comments. Thank you for being so diligent and trying to put this project together. Traffic, much like weather, is a study in chaos, and it's a whole form of math, and it can be done, and part of the study of chaos is separating elements out so you can do the calculus on it a little bit easier. And I think that's a great thing to do. We get the bikes away from the cars. There's one less solution drivers and bikers have to make with how am I going to navigate this? So appreciate your work. We'll look forward to hearing more from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rennell?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I'll try to be brief. Just most of this is basing off of of your answers for other questions. You spoke about an 8 to 8 realistically, right? That a lot of the comments that we've gotten are frustrations from community members saying, when is this going to happen? So just setting the stage and being on the record about the realities of it. When you talk about 8 to 10 years and you mentioned development, how are you tracking, how are you projecting that in 10 years, the work is going to have to change? How do you do that?
That's a great question. So we did an analysis of all the city's housing elements up and down El Camino to determine where there was growth planned and where, all the required housing was going. So that was part of it. And then we also have a lot of information from MTC, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. One thing to note is that El Camino is a priority development area, which just means that a lot of, if you're in that area, you're more likely to get funding for various, housing or transportation projects. So even beyond what the cities are planning regionally, we know that El Camino is going to have a lot of housing. So we have a variety of data sources, but housing elements have been the most precise way to do it.
And so in that projection, how do you, I guess in that projection, I'm looking at this slide that you still have up. And there's a tiny, tiny little number that is in parentheses that says that number is $2025. Are you also projecting that number to go up, or is that 750 2035 number?
That's a great question. So we are still in the kind of 0% design phase. So that number is, very rough at this point. As we go through PID and PAED, we'll have a much better sense of that figure, and we'll also be adjusting it for inflation each year. So all that is to say, I would expect that number to change at this point. It probably increase, not decrease, especially with all the increased costs of construction and all of that. One thing just to note, though, is that we are choosing a design that is more cost effective. So having center running BRT, for example, requires you to dig up all the utilities, things like that. We intentionally worked with our partners at both different agencies that are involved, as well as the cities, to come up with a realistic set of things that we could actually deliver. Because in 20 to 30 years, maybe we have center running BRT or something. But right now, we really want to focus on making improvements as quick as possible. And one thing just to also mention is that 8 to 10 years is for the whole corridor redesign, but we are going to be working with cities and working with Caltrans to fast track improvements along the corridor before then.
Okay, thank you for that. To know that 750 is a rough, sounds like a low estimate, like the bottom estimate. Speaking of doing it in piecemeal, I think there's also a lot of concern of making sure, yes, we live in different cities, but none of us live within the vacuum of one city. I mean, we don't even know when we're crossing another city, many of us. To that end, having a continuous, at least when you were biking, I think most of the communities of those who bike want to be able to have an experience where you don't have to get off the bike. You have a seamless experience. Is that, just to put it on the record also for the community, is that the goal? Whether it is community specific, but is there a goal to have a seamless experience?
Yes, that is one of the goals. So one thing I'll say is that it is possible for two different cities to have different facilities, and that you have a transition zone. So that's not the ideal. The ideal is that you have a continuous facility, whether it's transit lanes or bike lanes or pedestrian, wider sidewalks. But we obviously have limited right of way. We can't fit everything. So there is coordination happening between the cities also, just to make sure that whatever is designed, you have good kind of transitions at the city boundary. So it's not just that you're suddenly biking and then their bike lane ends. And then one of the things that is a part of the GBI action plan is that El Camino has, a lot of transit value with Route ECR. There's also a need for a backbone bicycle network. And so that can happen on El Camino, and that can also happen on parallel routes, but we need a regional network. And so we are working very closely with cities to deliver that.
Okay, thank you. And then the last words out of my mouth will be more of a comment, but you don't have to answer. Although if you have an answer, go for it. I think this is also an opportunity to think about nature-based solutions. One of the commenters that we got, one of the comments is that there's a lot of urban heat island effect, especially in a very concreted area like this. And if we're already going to spend, let's guesstimate $1 billion to redo a huge corridor, here's the opportunity to catch up to a changed climate and to having an urban living area that is able to protect us from a changed climate, from heat, from flooding, from anything else that we're living in with a changed climate. So my only comment, although if you want, it would be to have also a strategy, when possible, to add technologies, whether it's nature or man-made, that will protect us from a changed climate.
Yeah, I'll just say that street trees, groundwater, I don't remember the term, stormwater management, things like that are also going to be included in the plan.
Great, thank you. And I just have a few questions. Looking at the slide you have here, I'm curious, so for the CEQA documents, the environmental documents, which we know are really costly and take a lot of time, would it be done for the 22 miles of redesign, or would it be per city? I guess what I'm trying to ask, is this a comprehensive document that then would be tiered off, just to save time, or would individual environmental analysis even be required as these projects are implemented?
So the good thing is that a lot of the environmental requirements now, transit improvements are exempt. And so we don't have the whole EIR, EIS that we have to do for this that takes multiple years. We do have to do the documentation for exemption or whatever that is required for this. We're currently in discussion with Caltrans on what the environmental document will look like as a part of the PA and ED phase. It may be corridor wide, it may be segments. I think that's still an active conversation.
Okay, great. That's good to know. And then still looking at the slide, so when we get to construction in 8 to 10 years, is Caltrans responsible for that, or because it's on Caltrans, property, or is that who's responsible for that, or who'll be the lead agency, I guess?
That's to be determined. So it could be Caltrans, it could be contractors that do the actual construction. We're still in the process of defining the roles and responsibilities for the design phase, and we'll also be determining how we deliver the project as well.
Okay. And I think I also want to hear from Caltrans, maybe Jake, but once we get to that, with all this effort happening, would this be a priority project for Caltrans? Where does this fit in also preventing this from becoming another plan on the shelf, but actually getting implemented?
Yeah, I think that El Camino Real in general is a priority for Caltrans, just because it does serve as a main street through so many communities, and it is on our, it's the top of our list for injuries and seriously killed or killed or seriously injured.
In District 4?
In the entire Bay Area, it's the number one. So I think, there's an understanding from multiple offices within Caltrans that this is really a critical corridor. And for me personally, it's, very, very important.
Okay. Thank you. To have that on record.
Sure. One thing I'll just mention on street trees without,
Sure.
I don't want to be the bad guy too much, but it's important when we talk about street trees. Caltrans' current position and foreseeable into the future is that any additional street trees that we normally wouldn't do would be paid for and maintained by the city.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. And this, do you mind going to the slide with the map? This, I'm sure, may have been addressed in previous presentations, but why it was pointed out that San Mateo has the largest length. I'm curious, why are we combined with other cities? How is that decision made? And it seems like that's one of the only examples, other cities are having their own studies done individually.
Yes. So the only other city that's doing a joint study is CCAG San Bruno Millbrae study. The reason why we combined with Belmont and San Carlos is that at the time that we applied for a grant in partnership with San Mateo, Belmont, San Carlos, there was no local visioning effort underway right at that moment. And so we wanted to make sure that there was effort underway in both San Mateo, Belmont, and San Carlos to make sure that we could do this whole corridor. And so we applied with them and received a grant. And so it's also because the grant was structured that it was more competitive to apply with multiple cities.
Great. Thanks for reminding me of that. And then both public speakers, Seema and April, they mentioned projects in Palo Alto and Mountain View. Has Santa Clara County already gone through this comprehensive El Camino process?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So in order to be effective and try to kind of not bite off more than we can chew, we ended up having GBI focus on San Mateo County. So it used to be a bi-county effort with Santa Clara County. However, Santa Clara County is in a very different place than we are currently. They already have a bunch of these repaving projects with Caltrans underway. And so we thought that, continue to coordinate with Santa Clara County, but let's focus on San Mateo County and try to deliver the improvements here. However, we know that there have been really great improvements put in Santa Clara County, Mountain View, Palo Alto recently. Palo Alto, I'm not sure about the status of Mountain View, but Palo Alto recently put in those Class 4 bike lanes. So we're continuing to coordinate with them and kind of swap stories, share best practices, but that is actually a different effort that is being led by Caltrans, and it's through their safety and repaving projects. However, there are some of those projects in San Mateo County as well, and so we're working with Caltrans to see how we can include spot improvements that align with the visions of all the cities that are in this plan.
Yeah, I was going to recommend that we learn from whatever they've been doing, but are we sort of, I think you made a comment that there hasn't been any improvements on El Camino in decades. Are we on hold for future improvements until this plan is complete?
Yeah, so I'll amend my statement to say South San Francisco delivered a quarter-mile of transit improvements there, but beyond transit and multimodal improvements there. However, across the corridor, we have not had major construction tied to GBI through the last 20 years or so. The big difference, or the big outlier, is Burlingame's about to start their construction project, so that will be a big improvement. But sorry, remind me of.
Well, I guess going on that, so Burlingame's working already directly with Caltrans. So even though we're completing this plan, we could work with Caltrans on some of these improvements that, for instance, the left lanes or whatever it may be, or like that is a possibility, or do we wait the 8 to 10 years for anything to happen?
That certainly is a possibility. You, of course, are currently working on the ECR study that's setting out the vision for San Mateo. So you probably would want to implement the vision that's being developed there. But also to another point of waiting as a whole within the county, as you're aware, the TA sponsors funding programs on an ongoing basis. And we do want to be clear that should cities want to move forward more quickly or do spot improvements or do safety improvements, things that they want to see implemented on El Camino, we would be willing to fund those projects should they come in to our competitive funding programs and succeed if they don't preempt the long-term vision. So if they're in keeping with their local vision and the GBI effort, those could, of course, receive funding through the TA's other programs in order to be implemented more quickly.
Great. So we could pick and choose efforts to make action happen sooner.
Correct.
Great. Thank you. And if you don't mind going just to the last slide, I'll go ahead and give my comments. And then if anyone else wants to, who didn't before, I agree. I'm really happy to see this going with such momentum and support the project. About working best together, would love to. I think it could be interesting to see what succeeded in Santa Clara County and what we could replicate here. And from our public works, it would be interesting as we get further into this, what projects can we go ahead and implement versus have to wait out and see how we could have more action as been suggested by our public comments. But overall, I'm supportive, and I think in 10 years, we'll have a really different El Camino, and it'll be really exciting to see it then. Commissioner Narita, did you want to give comments now, or?
Sure, thanks. I'm sorry, I have one final question in light of everything I heard. Kasi, you said that each city decides what facility it wants, but Caltrans is the owner of the 82. So who's the final decider on the design if there's a disagreement?
I think it would be us.
Because you're the owner.
Yeah. When it comes down to it, we have the final sign off. That being said, we're trying to be collaborative here in a way that I don't think we have been in the past. So I think that, and not to mention, like I mentioned earlier, the shift in our organizational goals will lead to kind of a different result than you might be expecting from Caltrans. But the more engagement that we do through this effort, the easier that decision comes to us to make, if that makes sense.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, that was the one question. Now on to comments. Thank you so much for coming. This is so exciting. Hugely exciting to see everyone collaborating together to create this holistic experience for the residents of San Mateo County overall and for the city of San Mateo. As Sue Ellen knows, one of my pet peeves with the bike master plan is that it was only with the city. So once, for instance, our Pacific/Delaware bike lane gets to Belmont, it doesn't exist anymore. And I live close by, and I see people biking on our beautiful bike lane and then biking on just chaos, as Commissioner Krantz says. Like, it's terrifying, and that is just a product of our limitations as a city. And so this opportunity presents to itself to reinforce what Commissioner Renaud says, like that user experience that is going to be so much smoother. And I think if we can have that be a North Star, that leads to more people using these infrastructures. So that colors how I think about all of this, is that user experience, that residents experience, because people don't think about whether or not they're entering or leaving the city of San Mateo. They think about where they're going to go, right? Whether that's Redwood City, whether that's Millbrae, et cetera. It doesn't matter. We are a very fluid community on that front. So with that in mind, I do have some concerns about the position of prioritizing Delaware or other bike ped infrastructure over ECR if it's something where ECR does lead to that more smooth user experience across the region, because quite simply, the other thoroughfares that we have don't do that. Like, if we were able to get everyone to agree that some Delaware/Pacific back, behind the Caltrain bike thoroughfare was the way to go, that would also be amazing, and I'd be all for that also. But those streets are owned by the cities themselves, and there is not alignment over and I've been asking for that for 4 years, and it has not happened. So ECR is the answer. It just is, because politically it is not owned by any individual city, and instead it's owned by the state, and the state has the view of having to think about people regionally and as a whole state rather than city by city, where things are just inherently more limited. So to that end, totally understand that we want to prioritize transit. ECR is uniquely situated to do that. I assume, given your SamTrans, you're going to make sure that happens regardless. And at the same time, I do think the bike experience especially needs to be smooth and considered on ECR as well. And of course, the pedestrian piece, that to me is a little more piecemeal. I don't expect someone to walk from Palo Alto to San Mateo. I think it's completely feasible to bike those 7 miles. But with the PED, it's more about, I think that's more hyper-localized, where I think I would weigh perhaps the city's the city government's like perspectives on that more heavily than necessarily something where you move further with something like a bike or a bus. So that's kind of how I see that in terms of tiering various types of feedback. I think you'll find a lot of excitement for bike use on El Camino. To be totally honest, it's, I think, something that people are hungry for. I think it helps with the getting people out of the car, because I just don't think people are going to do that with a piecemeal infrastructure that we have right now across the different 15 jurisdictions or whatnot that you mentioned. And I'm really excited that, to continue to partner. So if there's ever other moments in time to provide further feedback on different milestones, I hope you do come back to the commission and that, we can have another dialogue, because it's been really great. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Renaud.
Just one tiny comment, just pushing back a little bit on Caltrans and the street trees and how they're the city's responsibility. I would just, you just said yourself that the state owns that street. You have also a state agency that cares about trees, CAL FIRE. So I would encourage you not to talk about street trees as if there's a burden to the city, and more as a benefit to all of us, and to partner with your state agencies to provide. You talked about vision shifts for your agency, being able to, when you're reimagining a road, you need to reimagine the entire concept of a road, because we're living in a different world than when those roads were built, or when Caltrans built those roads. And so in this new world, you do have a responsibility to provide a holistic comfortable travel, which includes street trees. And so I would encourage you not to just say that it's a burden to the city. It's a benefit to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments up here before we go to our youth commissioners? Yes.
One of the things I was negligent about bringing up was I was going to loop Public Works on this. Do you guys see any problems, impediments? How are you going to deal with this? Is it going to be a tax, or not a tax, but a burden on your resources and your workload and the money Public Works has available to it? How is this project going to affect you guys?
Well, I think we're participating in the initiative. We're participating on the El Camino or the Central Corridor plan. So I think that's our focus right now. We've been trying to put forward a few bike ped type projects recently, and they have not been without controversy. And so I think just I hear everything that's said in terms of the desire to have protected bike lanes on El Camino. I just think that to go down that path is going to require a very significant community engagement process. We've got a lot of businesses on El Camino that rely on that parking as the place for their customers to park. So, like I said before, anything in terms of doing protected bike lanes on El Camino is going to require a process of really engaging, because it's going to require either removing parking or removing lanes of travel. And so I think for us, that's, what we're experiencing is that the level of outreach and engagement that we have to do on these types of projects is very significant. And so that would definitely be a big burden if we had to go down a path of trying to do engagement on that. Not to say that we wouldn't want to do that, but I think that would be a big piece of it for us to figure that part out. Obviously, if we get into the point of implementing a project, then the burden on us would potentially be coming up with some of the matching funds that we'd have to come up with, which is challenging given our limited dedicated transportation resources, and then the staff resources to follow through on design and construction of projects. Definitely something that has to be balanced with everything else that we have on our plate. So there's a variety of things that would be a piece of it, but right now, I think our focus is participating in these planning efforts to engage in that process. So.
Thank you, Director Fabry. So I think you can get the feeling in the room. We're all passionate about living here. We love living in San Mateo, in California. It's just so many great things, and we're dedicated to making it right. We're dedicated to making it better. I met for coffee today with one of our constituents, and one of the things that came up was collective experiences of other cities like Portland, Oregon, Seattle, and hopefully we can have some takeaways. We can learn from what they went through and maybe not copy it exactly, but take the good stuff and the stuff that would be appropriate to San Mateo, be able to implement that on El Camino Real and have that type of experience where you feel safe. It's kind of like Maslow's order of hierarchy. You got to feel safe. You're not going to get run over, and then all the different ordinations. So I applaud everybody in the room. I applaud my fellow commissioners for taking this on, and I know we can do this. It'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you. And to our youth commissioners who will get to experience this in 10 years, more the most. Do you have any comments or questions? Yes, go ahead, Youth Commissioner Scott.
Just one question. You talked about like transition areas between like bike lanes for different cities. Do you have any like more specific ideas on like how that will work, or like will that be like sort of like a necessity between cities?
I don't have a ton of clarity beyond that, but it could be something like you transition from having a class 4 bike lane, so you have the separation, to a class 2, or potentially you're connecting to like a bikeway that is off El Camino. I think there are a lot of options.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, great. Thank you. And I don't think we don't have any decision. Okay. Before we move on, do we want to take a break or? Okay, I say we take a 5-minute break. We'll be back. I don't have a 8:40. Sounds good. Thank you.
Well, you know what? I'll see you later.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know, right? Never again.
See the message they sent you? Yeah. Laura was fine. It sounds like he needs to go for the next 7 days.
I'll send you an email. The light it's the one that we're worried about. The light comes on.
Oh, we got 5 minutes. It's freaking. Oh, man. Sorry, I just bashed into you. You're okay. I just got super excited. I was like, watch out. Here we come. Okay, so let's just.
Okay, looks like we're all back here. Great, thank you. So our next business item is reach codes for cooling, upgrades, and planned home renovations for the 2025 building code cycle with presenter Andrea Chow. Take it away. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Chair Michael, commissioners, and members of the public. My name is Andrea Chow, and I'm the Sustainability Analyst with the City of San Mateo, accompanied by Taylor from TRC. Tonight's presentation will review reach code options for the 2025 code cycle. Staff's recommendation this evening will ask the Commission to provide feedback on reach codes for cooling upgrades and home renovations. I'll start with some background on reach codes, and we'll dive into each reach code option in detail and also review community and stakeholder engagement. Title 24 of the California Code of Regulations, otherwise known as the California Building Standards Code, standardizes construction of residential and non-residential buildings in California. Relevant to tonight's discussion is Part 6, the Energy Code, and Part 11, the Green Building Code, also known as CalGreen, that governs energy efficiency in buildings. The state's building code is updated every 3 years, and every local jurisdiction in California is required to adopt that updated building code. We're currently in a code cycle towards the end, the 2022 code cycle, which will end December 31st of this year, and the upcoming code cycle to begin January 1, 2026. So what are reach codes? Reach codes are local amendments to the state code that reach above state requirements. Reach codes must use no more energy than the state energy code. They must be cost effective and have the cost effectiveness studies to validate that. And they cannot require equipment that exceeds federal standards. And reach codes can be adopted by a local jurisdiction at any time. Putting this into the context for the city has a climate action plan with ambitious targets for greenhouse gas emissions reductions. And we know that addressing energy use and emissions from buildings is significantly important because emissions from buildings make up 38% of our community-wide emissions. Reach codes are a policy tool that allow local governments to be leaders in climate solutions. And the City of San Mateo has a strong history of adopting reach codes to meet our climate goals. The city first adopted reach codes 10 years ago in 2015 and has since then explored the development and implementation of reach codes every code cycle. Currently, the city has a few reach codes in place that will expire at the end of the year. These are an electric readiness reach code for home renovations in single-family townhouses and duplexes. And then we have some new construction requirements for electric vehicle infrastructure and for energy performance margins in new construction. One of the reach code options we'll discuss tonight is another electric readiness reach code. EV infrastructure reach codes are not included in the discussion or of these options because state requirements have really caught up to where our previous reach codes have been. And then these reach code options do not include new construction only because cost effectiveness studies are not yet available. And they're anticipated to be available sometime in 2026. Peninsula Clean Energy is San Mateo County's not-for-profit, locally led electricity provider. They're providing 100% carbon-free electricity that powers our homes, our businesses, and electric vehicles. And their mission is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by expanding access to sustainable and affordable energy solutions. They're a huge leader when it comes to reach codes and coordinates the Bay Area Reach Codes team. And through this collaboration, PCE offers technical support to cities pursuing reach codes. They provide model ordinances, staff reports, as well as access to a technical consultant. They're supporting staff today at this meeting, as well as with our broader engagement with stakeholders. You'll see in these coming slides that the reach codes we will review tonight all occur during upgrades or renovations to existing buildings. These are critical in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions because the 2025 Energy Code, while it makes many improvements to encourage electrification in new construction, it often lags behind on building renovations. There's also a significantly higher volume of existing buildings as compared to newly constructed buildings in San Mateo. So it represents an important emissions reduction opportunity in our community. And I'm going to turn it over to Taylor to start to dive into our REACH code options.
Hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Taylor Taylor. I'm an engineer and I work for TRC, which is an environmental consulting company. I also lead our REACH code program for Peninsula Clean Energy, which is the Bay Area REACH codes. Thank you so much for taking time to talk about this important topic tonight. So as Andrea introduced, we will be talking about 4 different REACH code options tonight. 3 of those REACH code options are going to apply for single-family, townhome, and duplex buildings, and 1 of them is going to apply for non-residential building types. For our first option, option number 1, we are going to talk about cooling upgrades. Option number 2 is also about cooling upgrades, but the distinction between those 2 options is the building type to which it applies. In both of those 2 cases, the model ordinances are very similar. It is talking about at a time of installation of an air conditioner. In other words, a replacement of an air conditioner or an addition of an air conditioner. Property owners would have 2 different options under this REACH code. First option is in order to comply, they could install a heat pump as their air conditioning replacement. So a heat pump would be able to provide both heating and cooling in that scenario. Their second option is to install a like-for-like replacement, so still replace it with an air conditioner, but install additional efficiency measures with that option. So that covers option 1 and option number 2. For option number 3, which we will talk about, it is called a FlexPath ordinance. For a FlexPath ordinance, that is looking at time of renovation policies. So this is when a major addition or alteration is already occurring. Residents will be asked to comply with either energy efficiency measures, electrification measures, or solar PV. And for the 4th option that we'll discuss today, we're going to talk about electric readiness. So in this case, again, we're looking at time of renovation, but these target very specific renovations where someone is already altering the electrical components. And in that case, additional electric readiness will be required, either circuits, conduits, reserved breakers, etc. So that's the introduction to each of these policies. We will go into more detail. Starting with option 1, which was cooling upgrades for single-family homes, duplexes, and townhomes. Again, in this scenario, when you're replacing or adding your space cooling, you can install the heat pump, which would allow for both cooling and heating. So it would serve as the primary heating source, or you can install air conditioner with other energy improvements. The other energy improvements that will be needed there are going to depend on the specific project. So if the project isn't modifying ducts, the 4 different efficiency measures that will be required are to have a higher fan efficacy, to conduct refrigerant charge verification, to have R49 attic insulation, and to air seal at the ceiling plane. So that's in the case where the ducts aren't being modified. In the case that the ducts are being replaced, then the 3 different efficiency measures that will be needed is to have a higher fan efficacy, refrigerant charge verification, and R8 duct insulation. So when I'm saying other energy improvements there, those are what those specific improvements are. One of the things that's important to consider about these cooling upgrades policy is the Bay Area Air District upcoming air quality regulations. The Bay Area Air District is an organization that has authority to create rules to decrease air pollution. And the Bay Area is in non-attainment for two criteria air pollutants, which are ozone and particulate matter. This is important when we're talking about gas equipment because gas equipment creates NOx emissions, and NOx emissions go on to create ozone and PM 2.5. So by regulating NOx emissions or by encouraging electrification, you can help reduce criteria pollutants in the area. The Bay Area Air District, since we are in non-attainment, has authority to create these rules. And the primary rule in interest tonight is beginning in 2029, furnace sales are going to be restricted by the California Air Resource Board and the Bay Area Air District. So what that would look like is as furnace equipment is burning out or being added, that would have to be replaced with equipment that does not create NOx emissions in order to control air pollution. This is important to think about now because 2029 is just 4 years away, and these equipments typically have lifespans on the order of 10 or 20 years. So in order to help future-proof and to help install heat pumps now, residents can help get their homes ready for these upcoming air district rules. So upgrading to a heat pump when adding or replacing that AC unit results in cost savings both over the lifetime of the equipment and right away for reduced monthly bills. To give a little bit more context to those costs, I want to talk about the costs for a cooling upgrade reach code. And I'll talk about 3 different metrics. The first is upfront costs. So heat pumps can cost $1,000 to $3,000 more than air conditioner units. So as an example, if your average air conditioning unit costs $13,000, an average heat pump might cost $15,000. And then on top of that, there's going to be rebates available that often cover that gap. So for PCE specifically, there's a $1,500 rebate available. What this results in is those systems are going to be very similar in price. The second metric to consider is bill savings. So what are those month-to-month utility payments going to look like for residents? And for heat pumps, that will look like a $200 to $400 per year bill savings as compared to an air conditioner with a gas furnace. And third, we have to consider the life cycle costs. So not just the upfront costs, not just the month-to-month bill savings, but what does it look like over a 30-year life period of this equipment? And the main takeaway here is that heat pumps offer both heat and cooling to the home. So only one piece of equipment needs to be maintained instead of 2 pieces of equipment. And over the 30-year lifespan analysis of these replacements, installing a heat pump is estimated to save $10,000 as compared to an air conditioner with a gas furnace. To give more details on Peninsula Clean Energy's rebates, as I mentioned on the previous slide, for a heat pump, there's a $1,500 rebate. For a heat pump water heater, there's a $2,500 rebate, and there's also 0% loans available for up to $10,000. Additionally, there's an additional $1,000 for income qualified residents and $1,000 for electric panel upgrades.
For each of the reach code options tonight, I'm going to try to estimate the potential impact of that reach code in San Mateo. And I want to caveat that this permit data analysis is an imperfect exercise. And I'm hopeful that this will at least give you an order of magnitude of what this looks like if this were to be pursued by City Council and adopted in San Mateo. And so what we looked at was a data set of all mechanical permits, which include gas furnace replacements, air conditioner installations, as well as heat pump installations, and residential and non-residential buildings. This was one data set. There was an average of 328 permits per year in this data set, and the vast majority of these permits were from single-family homes, duplexes, and townhomes. And so unfortunately, the building type isn't something that we were able to filter for, so we're having to guesstimate, and we're guessing that they were 85% of those 328 permits were in that group. So a large portion could be captured by this type of reach code that would impact single-family homes, duplexes, and townhomes. The data set revealed that there was an average of 216 heat pumps installed per year and an average of 20 to 40 standard air conditioners installed per year. And so I just want to point out we're seeing a large number of voluntary heat pump installations through this permit data review. So even though we are seeing that trend, this reach code policy would ensure that property owners are considering a heat pump at the time of air conditioner installation. This approach is estimated to reduce 400 metric ton carbon dioxide equivalent per year by 2030. And I think it's helpful to reference other cities and what they're doing when it comes to reach codes. This approach has been adopted by the city of Menlo Park, Mountain View, and Sunnyvale, and is under review by some additional Bay Area cities.
Okay, now we'll move on to option number 2. So this is still a cooling upgrades reach code, but this one is applicable for non-residential buildings. In the state code, these are prescriptively required to be a heat pump at 5 tons and less. So this reach code is going to extend that to between systems, single zone systems between 5 and 20 tons. The policy is very similar as laid out for the single family buildings. So when replacing or adding single zone rooftop HVAC, applicants can choose one of 2 items. They can choose to imply a single zone heat pump, or they can stick with the single zone air conditioner. But in that case, they would have to also include a heat recovery ventilator. The heat recovery ventilator is a ventilation system that recovers energy by moving air between 2 different air sources at different temperatures. And that helps to lower a building's heating and cooling needs. So it's an energy conservation measure. Having the heat recovery ventilator paired with the AC unit helps make that system energy equivalent to the heat pump, meaning both options are saving energy and retaining that choice between the different systems. And then for costs, considering a range of different building types that exist for non-residential buildings and considering different ages of those buildings, a single zone AC will cost on average about $86,600, and the single zone heat pump would cost an average of $85,500. So depending on the building type and scenario, there can be around $1,000 in savings on average by installing the heat pump, but that cost will range between saving $10,000 and costing $17,000 depending on the building.
So this slide includes that same mechanical permit data set that I referenced on the previous option 1 cooling upgrade slide. I realized and want to point out that my staff report estimated 10 permits, but I think that was not exactly accurate of the data set. A more realistic estimate, assuming there's 15% left of that permit data set, it would be less than 50 projects per year. Multifamily buildings are not included in these reach code policies, but they are included in the data set that we're working from. This has a much higher impact when it comes to GHG emissions reductions, with an estimated 1,800 metric tons of CO2 equivalent per year. And it has not yet been adopted by any other jurisdictions, but I'll point out that the cost effectiveness study was just very recently published, as was the model reach code.
For option 3, the reach code approach is a flex path, which applies for single family homes, duplexes, and townhomes. How this approach works is during remodels of a certain size or dollar valuation, there would be a requirement to install energy improvements from amongst a menu of options to achieve an established target score. We will go into an example of exactly what that looks like, But the idea behind this policy is that it's very flexible in nature and allows for customization based on the project scope that the homeowner is taking under voluntarily. So these projects include major residential addition and renovation projects, and those will likely include plumbing, electrical, and appliance upgrades. At these certain project types, applicants typically already have a team assembled to help them with this project. So in this case, electric appliances are not required. They are only encouraged. And another helpful note about a FlexPath approach is that this is not targeting small projects, cosmetic projects, unpermitted work, repairs, etc. It's just looking at very large renovation projects. So I talked about a measure or a menu of measures that the residents would have to comply with. This is what that menu looks like for Climate Zone 3, which San Mateo is within. So on the left-hand side of the table, you'll see the measure names, and on the right-hand side, you're going to see a point value. This point value is directly associated with site energy savings for the different measures. So the point value is a calculation of the energy savings. Some of these different measures look like appliance upgrades, so moving to an induction cooktop or a heat pump clothes dryer. Other measures here look like insulation packages, air sealing, duct sealing. Others include windows, floor insulation, and then towards the bottom of the table, which are the highest impact measures, we have the heat pump water heater, solar PV combined with electric readiness, and heat pump space conditioning. So to take you through an example project scenario of what this would look like, let's assume there is a remodel project of 1,000 square feet. That could be a kitchen and living room in a single family home. There's no existing air conditioning in that home. We'll assume a construction cost of $500,000, which is $500 per square foot. That is a conservative estimate based on this. So if the number was higher, it's assuming conservatively. The FlexPath target score could be a value of 18 for alterations that are larger than 1,000 square feet. So in this case, how will this project have to comply with a FlexPath ordinance under those conditions? Assuming again that our target score value is 18, we will bring our measures menu back up, and we have two different compliance paths shown here. The compliance path on the top left in yellow, compliance path 1, the project can choose a heat pump space conditioner, and that one single measure will get them their 18 points and will get them in compliance with the REACH code. The total compliance cost in that case would be $12,500. And based on that $500,000 project valuation, that's a 2.5% cost increase for that project. That is just the upfront cost increase. That package would still be cost effective based on the on-bill and life cycle considerations. For compliance path number 2, this is if an applicant did not want to replace one of their major appliances with a heat pump. They could choose a suite of efficiency measures instead. That could look like a water heating package, air sealing, attic sealing, windows, new ducts, and sealing those ducts. That would also add up to a value of 18 points, and the total compliance cost there would be $21,800. And in that case, that would be a 4.5% cost increase.
For this REACH code option, there are two aspects of this policy that requires feedback and input. First, the definition of a covered project, which could be defined by dollar valuation or square footage. Staff does recommend using square footage because dollar valuation is self-reported and could result in some compliance issues. And I want to note, even if square footage is used as the threshold, cost valuation would still come into play to ensure that the REACH code requirements themselves do not cause an undue cost burden to achieve those REACH codes on the project applicant. So that 1,000 square foot threshold does not have to be adopted into the ordinance, but in order to provide clearer outreach to the community and to our stakeholders, staff have used the 1,000 square foot home renovation as an example for a flex path project, because saying home renovations of a certain size or dollar valuation is a bit too vague. Staff arrived at 1,000 square feet as an example threshold because it is a very significant home renovation, and through a rough preliminary scan of the permit data, appeared to impact 80 to 100 projects per year. A deeper dive of that permit data shows that the number of permits captured would roughly be doubled if you lowered that threshold to 500 square feet. And if you were considering something like 750 square feet, maybe something in the middle there. Again, I'll caveat that this data analysis using permit data is challenging, because some of the square footage information is not provided for every single project. So we're having to extrapolate, but again, trying to provide an order of magnitude for you to help provide input and feedback. This REACH code has an estimated impact of 730 metric tons of CO2 equivalent per year by 2030. And I'll go ahead and share some of the cities that have adopted or are considering FlexPath ordinances and then the way they selected their FlexPath ordinance. So the city of Menlo Park has a $100,000 or more threshold for their projects, and projects are required to select 2 measures from the list. So they didn't talk about target score. Santa Cruz adopted their FlexPath ordinance to apply to 350 square feet or greater for their projects, and they are required to achieve a target score of 9. And Palo Alto's ordinance is under consideration. They're looking at 1,000 square feet or greater, and projects are required to achieve a target score. So we talked a little bit about covered project definition. I'm also looking for feedback on what the target score of this ordinance would be should the council intend to pursue it. So in the previous slide, Taylor reviewed a compliance target of 18. I just have 2 example slides that I won't spend a ton of time on, but a FlexPath example project that has a target score of 12. In this example, the project could achieve compliance by simply installing a heat pump hot water heater. And then similar to what Taylor showed, there is an efficiency pathway as well. And so you kind of see how that percentage changes when it comes, the cost, upfront cost increase changes relative to that example project that Taylor went through in a different target, with a different target score. This other example I'll give is with a target score of 30. This pushes while this ordinance is intended to give the most flexibility to applicants so that they can choose the measures that match their projects or their specific home scenarios, an ambitious target score like 30 would provide the least amount of flexibility in reaching that. So you can see how in compliance path 2, it would require the project applicant to do a lot of efficiency measures to reach that target score. And I'll also note that target scores of 12 and 18 still enable that flexibility and also still drive towards progress.
Okay, and now we will discuss our option 4 for REACH codes, which is an electric readiness REACH code for single family homes, duplexes, and townhomes. So in this REACH code, when doing alterations and additions within 3 feet of an existing gas appliance, or including a new gas appliance, there would be some requirements around electrical infrastructure. So that would look like circuits, conduits, and reserved breakers. An electric readiness REACH code would cover the following gas appliances: stoves and cooktops, dryers, and water heaters. The cost may range from approximately $150 to $1,000 per appliance. And there are exceptions for an electric readiness reach code. So if a electrical permit is not otherwise required for the project, that would be an exception. If, as a result of complying with this reach code, you would need a electrical service or panel upgrade, that would be an exception. If this triggers repairs and or safety improvements, that could be an exception. ADUs are also exempt, just related to legislation around adding requirements for new housing. And mobile homes and manufactured housing are also exempt.
This electric readiness reach code approach expands on the city's current reach code that we've already got in place for electric readiness during home renovations. Unfortunately, permit data isn't available at all for quantifying this. And also, greenhouse gas emissions reductions are not able to be calculated because you're not requiring that installation of electric equipment. But this is really a future-proofing measure. It's not requiring the homeowner to install that electric appliance, but making sure they're putting in that outlet receptacle or electrical infrastructure at the time when it's most cost effective. This approach has been adopted by Menlo Park, Mountain View, and Sunnyvale. And so now I'm wrapping up with just a few more slides. One about outreach and engagement. Staff has prioritized broad community engagement as was directed by City Council after our Electrify San Mateo effort. Staff hosted one community meeting on October 1st at the main library. There were 8 attendees and there was great discussion with a lot of support, extreme support for the city pursuing reach codes. And they asked a lot of very specific questions on the details of implementation and the greenhouse gas impact of the various reach code approaches. And even those who maybe weren't as supportive of reach codes understood the intent and how this helps with the climate goals. There is always a comment that comes up about costs, which is why we tried to address costs throughout this presentation. But I just want to emphasize that these reach codes will only impact cooling upgrades and renovation projects that people voluntarily elect to do in their homes. If the City Council were to adopt a reach code ordinance, this would not mean that a homeowner would have to initiate any work just solely to meet the purpose of implementing the city's reach codes. Staff will host a virtual community meeting on October 21st at 6:30 on Zoom and another in-person community meeting on October 23rd at 7 p.m. at the Bayside Academy. So we're looking forward to 2 more community events. In addition, staff are engaging with HVAC contractors, general contractors, architects, and engineers regarding these reach code options. On September 25th, staff hosted one virtual webinars that was geared towards HVAC contractors, and we had 4 people that attended. And in general, all of the attendees understood the proposed reach code requirements, and they seemed very experienced in heat pump installation and seeing an increase in requests for heat pumps, or maybe themselves encourage heat pump installations with their customers. Staff is still following up with additional contractors for feedback on the reach code approaches. So the typical adoption and implementation timeline for reach codes takes about 6 months from that reach code ordinance introduction. Reach codes need to be filed and approved by the California Energy Commission before they can be enforced, and that approval can take 4 months. And next steps on this is really dependent on what City Council direction will be. And I showed on the previous slide that City Council discussion will occur, or tentatively is scheduled to occur on November 3rd. And so this evening, staff is asking for the commission to provide feedback on reach codes that we reviewed today. And staff specifically are asking for feedback on REACH code options and whether they'd recommend City Council adoption of one, the cooling upgrades requirement for single-family homes, duplexes, and townhomes, or a cooling upgrade requirement for non-residential buildings. And then if you are supportive of FlexPath for single-family homes, duplexes, and townhomes, we're also looking for specific feedback on defining that covered project and the selection of the target score that would be written into the ordinance. And then finally, that fourth REACH code option, electric readiness requirements for single-family homes, duplexes, and townhomes. And that concludes our presentation this evening.
Thank you for that thorough presentation. I'll now open for public comment. Madam Clerk, how many speakers do we have?
We have 5 in person and we have 1 online. I will give the rest of the online folks maybe a minute to decide. I'll start with the in-person folks first. So my first in-person speaker will be Robert, and my last in-person will be Fernando.
Members of the commission, Chair Michael, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here tonight. I thought I'd introduce myself a little bit. I've lived in San Mateo for 43 years. We've completely electrified our home. We got rid of all the gas equipment. We've even had the gas meter pulled out. We did it because we thought the climate calls for it. It's so important we do it. I'm also a member, and by the way, I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the San Mateo Climate Action Team. I'm a member also of the Peninsula Clean Energy Community Advisory Committee, and I'm not speaking on their behalf, but I want you to know that I am a member because I'm so happy to see the staff provided the information from the greenhouse gas tool in the presentation, because that was something that the Community Advisory Committee spent a lot of time on. It gives you as a commission and the council an option to really take a look at what all the different things that are before them, what the impact is on the environment. I really do support what staff has come up with tonight. And I want to say also that I'm really glad to see that Andrea included in the presentation the 30 points methodology and the FlexPath. That is what I favor. And you're asking why do I favor something so strong? And some of you are looking at me saying, well, of course he favors that, because it is strong and it is I think, the fastest way to have a deal with the climate crisis. When we did our installation of our homes, we actually did it before the IRA. We didn't have the advantage of having the IRA rebates or the IRA tax credits. We did have some minor rebates. I think what's going to happen after January 1st is that rebates will come in different forms. I think the market has matured a little bit. I think the price could come down. It might be a little less complicated for the contractors to install. All these kinds of things will make it much easier for the homeowner to install in their homes. So I thank you for taking this on, because the reason I'm pushing for the 30 points is that that is the best way, in my opinion, to get us to the 10 tons reduction in greenhouse gas per year that we're getting in our house, and I think everybody else could too. So thank you for this detailed presentation, and I thank you all for what you're doing.
Thank you. My next in-person speaker will be John, and after that, I will have Harry.
Great. Thank you, Commission. My name is John McKenna. Thank you to staff for a great presentation and their consultant. I am here as a father. I have an 11-year-old daughter, and I am doing whatever I can to create a better future for her and her classmates and future generations. I am a Menlo Park resident. I am currently the chair of our city's Environmental Quality Commission, which is a similar body to yours. As you saw in the presentation, Menlo Park has adopted these ordinances as well. Our commission recommended that they do so. Menlo Park is also planning on pursuing the commercial air conditioning to heat pump in the coming months. So I really encourage San Mateo to do the same. And frankly, I hope San Mateo will go even further in adopting even stronger codes that other cities can look to and follow. I agree with the previous speaker that I would love to see the Flex Path have maybe even a lower threshold on square footage and the 30-point target. I think that is what our situation calls for. So I just want to think these ordinances are very well crafted. They provide the applicants with various options. None of these ordinances require you to install a heat pump. That is certainly, probably, in my opinion, the best way to go, but it's not required. And so there's a lot of flexibility that these ordinances provide. Also, when people think about electrification, they often are concerned that they're going to have to upgrade their main electrical panel. And I just want to let you know that there are a lot of studies out there that show that most homes, it's actually rare that you need to upgrade your panel. I've fully electrified my home on a 100-amp panel with EV charging. And if you look at my PG&E data since I've electrified, I have never come close to utilizing those 100 amps on my panel. And again, it's a fully electrified home. So I have a colleague who's creating an app which contractors will be able to use to make a plan to electrify their home and stay within their existing panel. I would love to share that with any of you afterwards and show you how it works and how it'll be such a valuable tool in making it easier to electrify and to just avoid those panel upgrades, which are quite often unnecessary. So I just want you to think about the costs that we're passing on to our future generations if we don't take these opportunities to act. And I hope that we will invest in these opportunities now. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Harry Moody.
Thanks very much. I'm Harry Moody. I live here in San Diego, just 100 feet from Piazza's supermarket. I want to thank the members of the City Council, some of the members of the City Council, for coming to our demonstrations. I'm part of Indivisible San Mateo, and we particularly appreciate what you've said about Proposition 50. I'm here to talk really about climate issues, because that's the reason why I live in San Mateo. I live in San Mateo because I live near my grandchildren. I'm 80 years old. I care about my 3 grandchildren. That's why I live here, and that's why I work on climate issues. I want to say that I do whatever I can, but as we heard from the previous speaker, some people have the ability to do things in a private home. I don't live in a private home. I live in a condo. So there's limits to what I can do. We couldn't do everything, so we spent $17,000 replacing our windows because we couldn't install the heat pump and other things. But we're waiting till we can get rid of the gas and go electric. We do this because it's what we can do, and there's many people who can do these things, and I appreciate what I've heard tonight because I listened to this entire presentation about the impressive work that you've been doing on the code. What I would say about this is I've been to the home, I've actually visited the home of Robert and Terry Whitehair that we heard, and it's the real thing. I can't do that, but I can do whatever I can do. And you help all of us by increasing this flex path to 30 points. So I want to associate myself with that. And above all, thank you. And thank the entire City Council for what you've done to support us with the REACH codes. Thanks again.
All right. My next speaker will be Elaine, and my last speaker in person will be Fernando.
Hi, my name's Elaine Salinger. And before we get started on the REACH codes, I just wanted to really thank you for the report and the discussion on the GBI. I've served on the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Council for San Mateo County for the last 10 years. I hear all these sob stories. It's just, anyway, thank you. I particularly want to give a shout out to Commissioner Narita and Renaud, because you said exactly what I totally support and believe, so thank you. I want to thank you for the staff reports. They were excellent. I want to thank you for maintaining the City of San Mateo's role as a leader in building REACH codes adoption. Leading a group like this is not always easy, and I appreciate your dedication to sustainability, especially at a time when the federal government is tearing apart the guardrails that the EPA is supposed to provide. I'm here tonight not just to express my own opinion, but I lead a group called Citizens Climate Lobby of San Mateo County. We have over 1,200 members, and over 200 of them live in the city of San Mateo. So I'm here expressing their values and opinions. What Citizens Climate Lobby does is we work to create the political will for meaningful climate legislation, and we work in a nonpartisan way. So we have conversations and relationships with Republicans, Democrats, and everyone to move things forward. And it is really important that we be able to communicate with people who have other opinions and move them along in the direction where we want them to go. So we know that the cost of electricity is going to go down. We know this because of the recent laws that were passed by the California legislators in Sacramento. And we know that the cost of gas is going to go up over time because that's what it usually does. The reason the cost of electricity is going to go down is because of the legislative changes in the cap and invest legislation. So we also know that these REACH codes that you're considering will save a lot of money. I did an electric conversion. I used to have bills of $800, $900 a month. Now it barely tops $700 for the year. Usually it's $600. So it is a phenomenal savings. And it will help to give a stable climate to our children. The thing I really need you to understand in your gut, in your chest, in your heart, is that everything we do matters. Every fraction of a degree matters. Everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, my time's up. I planned that badly.
All right, my next in-person speaker is Fernando, and then we will have one more online person.
Okay, good evening, Chair Michael and members of the commission. My name is Fernando Pena, here on behalf of the San Mateo County Association of Realtors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this matter tonight and for staff's presentation. There's a couple of things I just wanted to see if maybe we can get some clarification on before any recommendations made to the City Council. It is my understanding that the state legislature imposed a 6-year timeout, pausing additional energy conservation code changes until June 1st, 2031 in Assembly Bill 130, which was enacted as part of the state budget this year. The 6-year moratorium on the proposal or adoption of new state building standards and modifications to building standards affecting residential units, new and existing, is from June 1st, 2025 until June 1st, 2031. The enacted law specifically prohibits a city or a county from making changes or modifications to building standards affecting residential units, including the green building standards and impacting Title 24. If the code was not adopted prior to the enactment of the bill, those codes will be paused for REACH standards until the sunset date in the bill expires or is extended. Any codes adopted in the interim will be held until June 2031. Secondly, the City Council recently reviewed 5 policy options regarding electrification, and the Council adopted a policy of leading by example to committing to electrification of city buildings, trucks, cars, etc. first, and not burdening existing homeowners. And here in San Mateo County, as you know, many of our existing homes are over 60 years old, and the true costs may include such things as panel upgrades. I am respectfully requesting that you take these concerns into consideration and seek additional clarification on how this squares with tonight's options, especially the volunteer aspect. But very, very happy to be here. We do encourage our members, homeowners, and housing providers to electrify on a voluntary basis, but we're opposed to mandates such as these, but I believe there's some voluntary aspects of it. But if you can take in those concerns in consideration, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And our online speaker, Wendy Chow, I will allow you to speak now if you can hear me.
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Michael and members of the Commission. My name is Wendy Cho, and I'm a renter in San Mateo. I've lived here since 2018. My family, including my 13-year-old son, we currently live in an all-electric home, which is about from the 1960s. We stopped using gas just last December when we installed a heat pump hot water heater and started using a window unit Medea heat pump that plugs into an ordinary wall socket. I am really excited about and supportive of all 4 of the REACH code options being discussed. To me, these are very common sense solutions, and I'm pleased that we talked about the context of the broader Bay Area, working from model REACH codes created by entities like Peninsula Clean Energy and the other local CCAs. These REACH codes would allow us to make progress right away on those cases where you're already trying to do an upgrade in the case of cooling or renovating in a major way your building. So there are 4 reasons I think we should support the REACH codes that we are talking about tonight. The first is time. The building codes we're talking about have truly long-lasting impact. For instance, installing a central AC unit will last 15 to 20 years. And if you were to change that to a heat pump, that's a really long time. A building lifetime will be even decades more. So this is a really important opportunity to take action to reduce air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions over this very long time horizon. Second is flexibility. These measures are not particularly controversial because installing new gas appliances is not being taken away as an option. It's just that these choices wouldn't give you a lot of bang for your buck, as shown in the slides. The third is functionality, and I think the great thing about heat pumps is that they work in 2 different directions, so we can ask people to take advantage of the better technologies that we have. It's common sense to want to install the appliance with the best performance and the most functionality. And then fourth quickly is cost. Heat pumps are fast approaching a like-for-like substitution when you consider the rebates and the extra savings on your energy bill. So, and I agree with an earlier speaker, John, our family is on a 100 amp panel and we did not require expensive upgrades. I think that's a myth that people try to perpetuate that to scare people. So thank you so much to the sustainability staff and the TRC consultant for their great presentations. I feel our city has made so much great progress on cleaning up our energy supply already. So the next best step towards sustainability is to electrify our buildings to take advantage of that clean, renewable energy. And cities are where climate action is thriving, given the depressing impasse of what's happening at the federal level. So I look forward to hearing your comments, and thank you so much for your time.
Madam Chair, that concludes public comment.
Great. Thank you all for the public comments and the valuable feedback on this issue. I'll now close public comment and bring back to Commission for additional questions and discussion. Would you still like to go? I'll let Commissioner Narita go first. She has a bit of a time constraint.
Hi, thanks so much for the accommodation. I am single parenting and I got a babysitter, so I'm a bit on the clock. Thank you so much for this presentation. Really appreciate it. I had just a clarifying question. Given the public comment from Fernando, could you clarify what the legal authority is for the city to even have this conversation tonight?
Yeah, so I'll reference or point you to the staff report as well, because it has the text from AB 130 that was adopted earlier this year and as the speaker stated, restricts local amendments to residential building standards after October 1st, 2025. However, there are certain exemptions, and one of those is related to a jurisdiction having a general plan that is approved before a certain date. And if the REACH code policy permits mixed fuel residential construction consistent with federal law while also incentivizing all electric construction as part of an adopted greenhouse gas emissions reduction strategy, the city's climate action plan serves as a qualified GHG emissions strategy and also points to REACH codes as a key strategy for meeting climate goals.
Great. So essentially what I'm hearing is we have our general plan. The general plan points to the climate action plan. The climate action plan points to taking on REACH codes as one of the solutions to the climate, to San Mateo's climate impacts. And therefore we are within our legal rights to talk about this and do a REACH code.
The city appears to meet the exemption of the bill language.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Fernand, hopefully that addresses the legal part of your comment. Thank you. Okay, so in terms of some clarifying questions, on option 1 for the heat pump HVAC, in light of, I believe, the federal incentive that usually stacks with PCE's rebate will be expiring sooner than had prior been expected. And so I was curious if PCE has been considering increasing the rebate to some degree to offset that loss that I believe starts in 2026.
So the PCE rebate is not going away and it's currently
right. I'm not asking if it's increasing.
And I also want to point out that cost effectiveness study does not include rebate savings in that analysis. And then what is going away is that tax credit that can be stacked. And we do have PCE staff on Zoom, but I'm not sure if they know their intentions about rebate amounts in the future. But I can follow up with you.
Okay, great. So, sorry. So PCE staff are on the call, but not in a position to answer questions. Is that accurate?
Oh, if we may, through the chair, can we have Blake?
Is it?
From PCE?
Yeah, Blake, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, I think.
Sorry, Blake.
Hi, my name is Blake Hershaft. I'm the Senior Building Electrification Engineer for Prudential Clean Energy. We do discuss our rebate program every week, and we're discussing it today. We plan to maintain the $1,500 rebate for heat pump HVAC systems, which is sized specifically to ensure the cost equivalency or thereabouts between an air conditioner and a heat pump. We don't have a plan to change that particular rebate. I will also note that for low-income homeowners at 80% or below area median income, we provide full home electrification or any end use for free entirely. The entire cost is borne by us. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. Okay, so then on option 2, I didn't understand the 5 tons or less is in the state code, but then 5 to 20 tons is now the REACH code. I didn't know what the tons meant, and I don't know how they translate into the different buildings. Like, are they building uses, building size, building floors? Could you talk about that a little more?
Yes, thank you for your question. The tons is just related to like the design capacity of the equipment. So how big the equipment is, how big the building is that it's serving. So in the state code currently, there's already a requirement for smaller units. So less than 5 tons, smaller units. This REACH code expands that requirement from just those smaller units to units that are a little bit larger. So between 5 and 20 tons.
And do the 5 to 20 ton units serve like a bigger type of building or a different type of building? Like what is a 5 ton or less doing? Like what's the square footage of that kind of building versus the 5 to 20 tons?
Right. So it depends on the type of building. There's a couple different main ones for non-residential spaces, which is retail spaces and office spaces. Those can be small, those can be medium, they can be large. This REACH code would also apply for grocery stores, financial institutions, and libraries as well. So it really depends on the specific building type. I think based on San Mateo's building stock, this would primarily apply to retail and office spaces. Those are the 2 most common ones.
Yes, understood. Sorry, but you're talking, it's like bigger. So essentially what is happening right now, the state code, 5 tons or less, those are smaller buildings. Then 5 to 20 tons, what we're doing for the REACH code, are those bigger sized buildings? Are they taller buildings? Who uses this 5 to 20 ton equipment?
Got it. And I think I'll ask Blake to speak up on this, given his background.
I'm raising my hand here because I'm a registered mechanical engineer who designs HVAC systems in California. So that's my background. So just jumping in here, and I do look at roofs for tonnage of air conditioners and heat pumps a lot. So if you see a Costco or a grocery store or a big box retail store like that, anything with kind of a large area, even gymnasiums or larger places in like low to mid-rise, so 2, maybe 3-story office buildings, that's when you'll see this larger size pop up. And when it's a smaller retail or a restaurant or like a smaller office building, those will typically be 5 tons or lower.
Okay, great. So this is counterintuitive to me because usually with codes, the bigger buildings are regulated and then it's like smaller buildings that are like not regulated. But here it's the reverse, which is what confused me a bit because it's actually the state code is regulating smaller equipment, not the bigger equipment. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Blake. Okay, going to option 3. You mentioned that the point value, the chart with all the different points for the different pieces of equipment, that was really interesting as a concept. Is this table unique to the city of San Mateo, or is this something that's in the model ordinance that PCE is recommending all cities within PCE's jurisdiction use?
Yeah, so this table is specific for Climate Zone 3, which includes the city of San Mateo and really all of San Mateo County in general. That's based on the general weather patterns and trends for the area. So this is modeled specifically for this area with those site energy savings as the point value.
And could you remind me, are there, where is Palo Alto and Santa Cruz located? Are they in different climate zones?
Palo Alto is Climate Zone 4, so yes, different. Santa Cruz is the same.
Okay, thank you. And why, when creating the point value table, was only site energy savings utilized versus, a more holistic approach that may include things such as health considerations?
That's a good question. That was the statewide utilities team who put together those cost effectiveness reports that used site energy savings. I would have to look into the specific reasons for that metric choice as opposed to source energy savings.
Okay, so I'm not even asking about just energy. I'm also asking about health. So what I'm hearing though is because basically the state agency has cost effectiveness tests. You're manifesting that cost effectiveness test into this user-friendly table of measures to align with that, to make because cost effectiveness tests are super wonky and complicated and dense. So yes. You're manifesting that into something that's more user friendly, but it's it's directly correlated with something that the state PUC did.
Yes, that's correct. So, or not the state PUC, but the statewide REACH code team, which is funded by the utilities.
Oh, okay. The statewide, yes. Okay, statewide.
So they're
REACH code
the organization that puts together the cost effectiveness resources. And yes, this table is linked to all of the cost effectiveness information.
Okay, great. And so for the non-electric options, so not the heat pump, not the stuff that's in PCE, are there other incentives or rebates for some of the other measures? Andrea, that you mentioned, like the windows and the other things in the table that you add up, the duct ceiling or the attic insulation or the like.
Yeah, so I know there is a program that relaunched through BayREN that is an income eligible program for targeting efficiency measures in homes.
Okay, great. And then when it comes to implementation of this option 3, let's say city council supports it, and there's still the 80 to 100 permits roughly, let's say, that are going to be falling under this regulation. What is the implementation pathway for the city?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about other cities that have implemented flex paths. There, you would have to develop a specific procedure for processing and checking that project applicants were complying with the REACH code. On the project applicant side, they already have to have an energy engineer likely if they're pursuing a large home renovation. So they're already on staff and making those determinations and calculations. Taylor, I don't know, do you have anything to add about procedures?
The main thing that I would add is that since these are such large, major renovations and additions, that the permit process is already fairly involved to go through that. So adding these couple additional pieces to it, it's something that eyes will already be on. I'll also say that TRC does support both adoption and implementation resources. So if there is anything that the building department wanted to see in terms of a checklist or some kind of one pager, we would be available to provide that.
Okay, great. And are there potential options, for instance, like if a project somehow falls short by a point or something like that, like to have some sort of consultant, is that what you're describing then, Taylor? Like, would someone be available to help consult on this sort of thing? Or would the city be open to not exemption full stop, but like an exception that would accommodate some sort of unique use case where they get to only 11 points or 17 points or 29 points?
Yes, there's exemptions currently in the model code language for that exactly. So there's an infeasibility or cost burden exemption. So they can apply to the building official for that.
Usually though, those things are a flat out, you don't have to do anything. I'm not asking about that. I'm asking a more nuanced thing.
Right. So in that case, yeah, if you can only reach a value of say 10 points and 12 is required, if you can show that you can reach the 10 but not the 12, that is what is captured by that exemption.
Okay,
it's
great.
not a point blank. I'll also mention that there are a lot of other exemptions for the flex path in general for particularly difficult situations.
Okay, what are some of those example particularly difficult situations?
Historic homes are exempt. HOAs not allowing certain measures are exempt. Those are the two that come off of the top of my head. Repairs are exempt. So if you're only completing a large renovation project for repairs, that would be exempt as well.
Repairs as in after an earthquake or a storm or
a fire.
Okay. Okay, got it. Thanks. Okay, option 4. What is the exact thing that's being installed here when we talk about electric readiness? Is it an outlet next to a gas stove, essentially?
Yes, it's the outlet, and then it would also be the conduit, so the wiring running throughout the wall and the reserved breaker space at the panel.
Okay, great. And then one of the public commenters asserted that the cost of gas will continue to go up and the cost of electricity will continue to go down. What are your thoughts on the future cost of gas and electricity? I think about this especially in the sense of, there's a lot of talk in the zeitgeist around hyperscalers and AI and data centers, et cetera. I'm just curious what the official line is here from the city and from the experts.
I'd welcome Blake's input if he would like to come off mute about the cost of electricity and gas. Thank you.
We are always watching the cost of electricity and maintain between 5 and right now 10% lower than PG&E on the generation side. It is difficult to forecast fuel costs, as you've seen with gasoline prices over the past few decades or however long everyone here has been alive. It is forecasted that gas prices will go up more quickly than electricity prices. And some people are opining that with growth of AI, that might lead to more share of the cost, so the cost to go down per kilowatt hour used on electricity. But I think it's a little bit unknown what will happen there. Generally speaking, the forecasts we've seen previously are maybe gas prices to go up about twice as fast as electricity prices. Those forecasts have not always been born to be accurate. I wish I could give you a better answer.
That's helpful though. I mean, and so it's basically what I'm hearing, Blake, is that even if both things went up, gas is going to be going up faster and therefore will continue to be more costly, by if assuming an increased rate of expense.
Yes.
Is that
That's what-
accurate?
That's what the CPUC is forecasting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, last question. Are the individual point values in the table up for conversation, or are they locked in?
Those are locked in as those are based on the cost effectiveness studies.
Okay, great. All right, so just some quick comments. Thank you so much to my fellow commissioners for your patience with me. I support option 1. That seems very intuitive. I support option 2, also seems very intuitive. And I support option 4, seems incredibly intuitive. I think option 3 is very interesting. I think we should try it out. I would be supportive of it. I'm not quite sure where I would want to put the point total. I understand the desire to have something ambitious with a point total of 30. However, that will run the risk of legal ramifications where we would basically effectively be making an ordinance where we would drive everyone to do an all-electric path, which would actually be, I believe, illegal. So I would be very cautious to the city about making something where effectively we are favoring a fuel source over another, because the current law is that we are not allowed to do that. So I do think something lower than the 30 might be in fact legally warranted. You might want to talk to city attorney about that. I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I am hesitant.
Yeah.
Do you have, sorry, Andrea, is there something?
I would want to emphasize, Taylor, because when we put together the tables, there has to be a cost-effective pathway in order to set the target score. And so that is a cost-effective pathway.
The 30 is a cost-effective pathway because there was a $7,000 delta.
Right. So the cost effective pathway is compliance path number 1. I would have to check with the specific results if the compliance path number 2 is also cost effective. The requirement for that second compliance path is not necessarily cost effectiveness, but energy equivalency to the first path, if that makes sense. So you either can show cost effectiveness for both paths, or you can show it for just one path, which is the legal requirement, and then demonstrate energy equivalency for the second path. Since in this case, the target score is 30, the same score for both, either way would be energy equivalent.
I don't understand that. Sorry, I don't get that. So legally, we have to have only one pathway has to be cost effective. That's what you're saying.
Legally true. Yes.
Yes.
Legally only one, not both.
Yes.
Okay. So then you have to then offer a second pathway, and that second pathway needs to save as much energy as the first pathway.
Yes.
But it does not need to be cost effective.
Correct.
Okay. And so are other cities thinking about 30 as their price, as their point equivalent?
So the examples I showed did not show 30. I don't know if there are any under consideration.
Okay, got it. I don't think it's a good idea. I really don't. And I think the reason for that is because if it's forcing a conversation that I don't think politically we will be able to justify. Because what we're essentially saying is like, haha, alternative pathway, you're going to be $17,000 more expensive. And that to me is not really a choice at that point. And I do think that the law, I don't have to agree with the law, and I don't agree with the law, but I do think the intent of that law is to not force people to choose a certain fuel. And this calculus seems problematic to me on that front. With that said, I'm all for 18, which is the one that you had presented, Andrea. I would actually be open to something higher than 18 if you wanted to like wiggle and figure out where that would be between 18 and 30. I'm all ears on that. Very amenable. I don't think we should dip down to 12 because by the calculus, I think like doing two measures makes sense if the project is 1,000 square feet. And I think keeping it at 1,000 square feet for this first round would be an interesting and important, perhaps pilot, Andrea, but I would be very open to dipping down in out years once the kind of infrastructure, the staffing, all of that was well underway and figured out. and made, efficient, I could imagine dipping down to 500 at that point and later years. Okay, so that's me. Is there anything else that I need to answer?
No, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much to my fellow commissioners for that accommodation.
No. I'll swing to this side. Are you guys ready or? Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Renaud.
Thank you, Commissioner Rita. That answered a lot of my questions. So I'm going to be faster than that because most of those questions were mine. It's kind of maybe an obvious question. For the flex path, I'm just going to ask about the flex path. Lowering the square footage increases the number of, theoretically, homes affected.
Yes, by selecting a lower square footage, you would capture more projects.
And this might be a PCE question, but are there enough rebates available the lower we go and the more people would apply for it?
Yeah, about rebate availability, I would point to Blake to share out on that.
Yes, we're not concerned about rebates running out in conjunction with FlexPath in particular, even if multiple cities adopt it. We're very committed to the rebates remaining available.
Thank you. And then the outreach question, not about the outreach before, but a plan for outreach after to explain whatever happens next, right? Whatever the council adopts. Is there either a plan or a model of how the other cities, Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, Menlo Park, who have they have a couple months, a little bit of more lead time of how to explain this to people? It's a little confusing.
Yeah, I think as staff, we're really waiting for that city council direction to determine next steps on how we would engage with the community and support them with the transition. But I'll point out that, the city has experience implementing REACH codes in the past. And so we have a very seasoned internal team in communicating our REACH code requirements to project applicants.
Thank you. And then just again, this is just to say it out loud, we can revisit the point system, the square footage. It can be revisited at any point, but explain a little bit of if we can revisit it and what are the pros and cons of that.
Sure. Yeah. So I mentioned REACH codes can be adopted, repealed, revised at any time. There, of course, is an administrative burden with doing so, as you would imagine. This particular effort requires a lot of staff time, consultant support for that broad community and stakeholder engagement, and then the administrative work of putting together the ordinance, revising it, and then filing it again is a bit of work. That being said, we are very experienced here with the city in adopting and revising REACH codes. So we do have that. I think we have a level of efficiency with REACH code work now.
And I apologize if you already answered this in Commissioner Rita's questions, but what were in the FlexPath option? What did Menlo Park and what do the other cities adopt? What was the formula?
Let's see if I can quickly go to the slide. But for Menlo Park, their threshold was $100,000 and selecting two measures. So it wasn't choosing a target score. For Santa Cruz, it's 350 square feet and their target score was 9. And Palo Alto's under consideration, 1,000 square feet, target score of 12.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So my recommendations would be, I would be in favor advancing 1, 2, and 4. And then for the flex path, I agree with Commissioner Rita. 30 sounds aggressive, but I would be in favor of lowering the square footage to 700 and then the point system being at 18. And thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for being so succinct. Um, okay, go ahead, Commissioner Krantz.
Those who are first shall be, anyway. Commercial buildings contribute less than residential. Can you explain that? How is that possible? We were like your third slide, maybe second slide. There you go.
Oh,
How does that work?
this is capturing the energy use and in commercial and residential buildings. And residential, we have a very large amount of residential buildings here in San Mateo.
So it's just that it's just more residential units than there are commercial units. Because I'm picturing restaurants, apartment buildings. They got to be burning a huge amount of energy as compared to a home.
Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry it's not on the slide, but yeah, residential built environment accounts for 22% of our total GHGs, and then commercial and industrial, 16%.
Okay. We talk about cost effectiveness, and I heard some rumblings about you don't need to upgrade your panel. And so for a lot of homes, especially if it's underground services, a lot of the services typically, I don't want to get in the weeds about this, it involves going under your driveway. In the 70s, early 80s, there was direct burial. So that means you got to tear up your driveway to now put in conduit so that PG&E can pull your whatever, 150 amp service, 200 amp service. So, and once it gets to the meter box, oh, we need a new meter box because the ampacity is not, it can't handle it. And then from the meter box into the house to the circuit breaker panel, well, you're going to need a new breaker panel. So it exponentially goes up. And I'm trying to just be, clear that there is a cost involved with this, and it's not an insignificant cost. I heard a couple of the people in the audience talking about you can get away with 80 amps to power all these. Well, maybe in a townhome, but not in a house. I would suggest we talk to a subject matter expert up to and including some of the San Mateo contractors, the people in our building department that actually know what they're talking about, not me. A lot of this is dependent from the National Electrical Code, the NEC. So in a nutshell, if it's connected hardwired to the wall, the ampacity, the amperage counts for your total amperage use, because you can't determine I'm going to run the hot tub and the oven and at the same time. There's no way to differentiate out, so you don't want to overdo the panel.
Yeah, so I'll share two things.
Yeah, go.
One is that we definitely rely on experts. We have Taylor from TRC Consulting, and we're relying on studies that are developed by the statewide codes and standards team to help us develop model ordinances that are backed up, validated, and justified by these cost effectiveness analyses. Also working on direct contractor and stakeholder engagement, and of course with our building department, our community development department, that would be holding a lot of the work in implementing these REACH codes. And then I'll emphasize, these REACH code policies apply to project applicants who are electively taking on this type of work. And so if you don't have an intention to install an air conditioner in your home or do a major home renovation, then this does not apply to you.
Right. You talk about 1,000 square feet. So interesting. Are you adding 1,000 square feet to your house? Or if you're doing your roof, and the roof, let's say when you add up all the square feet on the roof, it's 1,100 square feet, would that trigger an event?
There's a specific exception for if you're replacing a roof. So if you're only doing a roof project or only doing a window project or only doing a combination of a window and a roof project, that's exempt from the flex path.
Perfect. Good news. Okay. Just a quick thing. So we talked about the life cycle of equipment. If you have a hot water heater and or a heating system, a space heating system, and an air conditioning system, the life. So here's an interesting factoid. With a heat pump, it runs all the time, making heat and making cool. Whereas the heating system doesn't necessarily run in the summer and the air conditioning doesn't run in the winter. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there. It's like apples and oranges. So it's just, what are your thoughts?
The lifespans will be slightly different between different equipment types. The cost effectiveness studies do factor in the real life cycle cost for those over the 30-year span. So it'll show you the different scenario between air conditioner replacements, heat pump replacements. So all of those factors are accounted for.
Got it. Got it. Okay. I'm also in favor of 1, 2, and 4. I think 3 is somewhat problematic. I don't know enough about the law to know what's legal and what's not legal. It's not my wheelhouse. And again, 30 is a big number. I think 18 or 20, if we're going to go with number 3, might be a little bit more realistic. So the question remains, once we start implementing this and we get some feedback and some user feedback and from the field, from our inspectors, would we be able to adjust any of this?
Yeah. To Commissioner's earlier point, yes, the city is able to repeal, adopt, revise local amendments as we need to, but of course there's a process to do so.
Right. Perfect. Okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner Robbins.
Sure, you don't want to go?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Andrea and Taylor, thank you very much. Let's go up to 10,000 feet for a moment. I think the public benefit is very clear on all these, and been looking at reach codes for years, but there is a cost involved. And I have a long history. Now I'm speaking as a commissioner, but I have a long history with the largest anti-poverty charity in our county. And this city has a level of working poor. Some are actually homeowners. It's amazing how many people inherit that home or bought it back in the day, but can't afford much now, as well as renters who are barely able to make their rent. So those are things I look at. And it's a balancing act. No doubt we'd love to, climate change is very real and a real problem, but we have to be mindful of the city residents and the economic impacts as well. So with that in mind, I'm actually lukewarm, no pun intended. Guess I could have said I'm cool on number 1. And it's because my experience is that the study numbers, and we've been looking at these, I've seen this study and other studies, they don't really match the real world. I've kind of went down the list. I've done attic insulation, new ducts and duct sealing, solar, heat pump, and then things that aren't even on the list, but that we've talked about, panel upgrade, type 2 EV charger. And even with rebates, they've all been more expensive than what I've seen in the studies, usually even more expensive than the ranges. So I'm just I'm not a hard no, but I'm just a little concerned that we don't always have the right data there on the actual economic impacts on number 1. That's just one voice up here. Number 2 is easier. Because we're talking non-residential and the exposure is it's no less real on the cost, but it's shared, it's basically spread. The developer, well, depending on the nature of the building, there's going to be the tenants of the building, the customers of those tenants. So the cost is spread out and it isn't hitting just a single family homeowner at all. So I'm yes on 2. On 3, I have a question. That's the one question I had, which is, do you get credit? Would somebody get credit? They're doing an addition. Would they get credit for existing compliance?
Yes, any measures that have already been installed recently, they just have to submit that paperwork with their application and demonstrate they've done it, and that will count towards their points total.
Okay, I want to go on the record. We are not looking to do an addition on our home, but it would seem somewhat unfair if you're adding a room and you already have solar and a heat pump and you don't get any credit for it because what are you going to do for that one room that would make the points? Okay, I actually am a big fan of number 3. I do think, though, that the devil is, as always, in the detail. I look at the, I guess, a couple of your questions. The defining covered projects, I think, has to be square footage. I don't think it can be dollar amounts because that's a big moving target. Square footage isn't. We're going to have X square feet and that'll go up or unlikely to ever go down. But anyway, so I think that's what we have to do. And I'll be the first to admit I don't have the expertise to come up with the square footage and or the points, but I look at Palo Alto and I'm a partner at a law firm down in Mountain View, and most of my partners live in Palo Alto. I have an idea of what Palo Alto real estate is like, and I even looked at it back in the 90s when I was foolish and young and thought I wanted to somehow live down there. But they just don't have the level of economic diversity as we do. So I would be hesitant after first putting that stake in the ground that I just don't know. I don't have the expertise, but I'd be hesitant to lower the square footage or increase the points above Palo Alto's. Obviously, basically, I would not want to be necessarily more stringent than they are in this first instance. And that would mean not lowering the square footage. I just want to make sure I don't do it backwards. Because not going after smaller projects. Somebody's putting 1,000 square feet. My home is a whopping 1,900 total. So 1,000 square feet's a pretty, it's a whole nother story, I guess. Pretty significant. They're already taking on a big burden, and the delta for some of these compliance matters is not as huge as a percentage. And then the points, again, the idea that you get credit would soften me, but I just don't feel I have the expertise. So I'm a little hesitant to go beyond the 12 points that they have, and unless we have some other examples. And electric readiness, item 4, I'm a fan, but I wanted to dig down a little bit. Yes, there are costs involved, and it's likely to be problematic for lower income homeowners or renters who are going to have it pass through, but either need to have a new stove or just want one. But it is, what would you call it? You called it futuring, I guess. It's, the cost of going back in at a later date is so significant, as opposed to doing it now when you're ripping out one appliance and putting in another. It just seems to me like that's the right thing to do, to get people, like it or not perhaps, but to think about the long term. And that's one way of doing it. So that's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to give a chance for the youth commissioners to go before I speak. Do either of you have questions or comments? Commissioner Singh, go ahead.
I don't have any questions for you guys today. I feel like most of my concerns have been answered by my fellow commissioners. But I would say out of the 4 options that you've brought before us today, number 2 appeals to me the most because, correct me if I'm wrong, but this one has the largest reduction of CO2 in metric tons. And considering option number 1, I think the rebate system's particularly helpful, but considering the changes that are going, I feel like that might be a little tricky economically. I know Commissioner Robbins brought that up as well. Regarding option 3, I feel like the flex path, there's a lot of little things in there that could cause problems for the everyday person and the people that are trying to immediately move towards this. And I think the biggest downside for option number 4 is the fact that we don't have quantifiable greenhouse gas emission data available. But yeah, I think your presentation was great, and thank you.
Thank you. Youth Commissioner Scott.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. It was really informative. For options 1, 2, and 4, I feel like they're sort of like a no-brainer, and I would like support them. And I think 3, there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of different perspectives to consider. But I think I would support there being like a slightly lower square footage amount. So maybe like around 750, because just looking at that, that could increase. It's like 1.5 times more people than like the original 1,000. And also I think like a high amount of points would probably be good, but I don't know where to define that. Like with Commissioner Dorita's like concerns, I also feel the same concerns. So I don't really know where to put that. I don't have enough expertise, but I would support a high amount of points. Maybe between like 18 and 30.
Great, thank you. I do have a few more technical questions. Probably I'll just have to scan which ones have been responded to already, but thank you so much for the really thorough presentation and being able to answer everyone else's questions. For option number 1, the city has already implemented this REACH code in the past, right? It's just been paused because of regulation.
So the city's prior REACH code that required heat pump installation at the time of air conditioner installation. So yes, very similar. This approach that we have before you tonight is, responsive to the litigation between the California Restaurant Association versus Berkeley, and ensures that there are multiple compliance
Pathways.
options. Yes, that and do not prohibit the installation of gas infrastructure or require a certain appliance installation.
But it was implemented for, would you say, a year?
A year.
Okay. And in that time, did you get any pushback, or did you feel, because I'm guessing also the numbers and permits reflect that year of heat pumps being installed too?
Yeah, that year required a lot of education.
Okay. So the groundwork was placed already for us to move forward with it. Great. For option number 2, are multifamilies not included because the cost effectiveness studies are not yet available, or?
That's correct. There's no current cost effectiveness study for the multifamily buildings.
And is this helpful? Is this already done by commercial buildings? Like, are they familiar with this? Because it doesn't seem, if I'm correct, it's not a big cost, extra cost to them. So are they doing this already?
Yes, this is a fairly common project already, and these technologies are known for commercial buildings.
And they're being installed even without this requirement?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then for option 3, I wanted to just, if you don't mind also going to the slide with the point system, but I wanted to clarify, it's not new square footage, right? It's just what if you're renovating 1,000 square feet, it doesn't need to be in addition to your home. It could just be you're redoing your, let's say, 1,900 square foot house, right? Okay.
Right.
And then, so let's just say that we end up adopting the heat pump space conditioner. So if someone is, and we do FlexPath, so if someone is already doing this renovation and deciding to install an air conditioner, then they could automatically get these 18 points just because they are required to put in a heat pump air conditioner for an AC. Like, you're able to double count those.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then, excuse me, are any of the other non-electricity options, are any of them required under Cal Green if this size of the project is triggered as a project, a new construction project?
No, these would all be beyond the state code.
Okay, thank you. And similar, number 4 was also part of our previous REACH code. Okay, for electric readiness. Great, thank you. And questions about exemptions were answered, that they do exist for financial burdens and then the point system and so on. Okay. Oh, I did have a question that you may or may not know, but about the panel upgrades. Public speaker mentioned, that often you don't need to upgrade. Who decides that? Do you know? Is it the contractor or is it the city building permit decides that you need a bigger electricity panel?
I'm fairly certain that's influenced by the contractor. So the contractor would advise the homeowner on a panel upgrade, and then that request would get submitted to the utility, and that would include a load calculation. And so the utility itself would then approve or kind of issue what service they will provide for that building.
Okay. Because I do think that kind of public education, even at the building permit desk, I mean, we did a renovation and I'm pretty sure our new building, our new panel is much more than we need as well. Okay, I think that are all my questions. So for me, I think number 1 and 4, because we've been there, we've already set the groundwork. I think we should go ahead and move forward with those. Number 2 also seems like a no-brainer if it's, especially if commercial buildings are already, have been considering this. And number 3, I was inspired by my other commissioners that I like using Palo Alto's example as sort of our framework, and being able, I'd rather go a little bit more conservative and being able to learn as a pilot how this works and being able to adjust as needed to either capture more or lessons learned and see how difficult the flex path may be for homeowners to implement. I think you got all your answers.
Yes, thank you so much.
Great. I lost my pieces of paper somewhere here, but I think we are ready to adjourn. Oh no, are there any new business that we need to, any reports or announcements? Nope. Okay. I think otherwise we're ready to adjourn. Thank you for all your hard work.